now where Taiwan is located, these two plates are being pushed one under the other in what we call a subduction zone, forming, some of the deepest parts of the ocean basins. They're called trenches. So that bending of the plates and the forcing one under the other basically causes slippage along those plates. And when that slippage is quite abrupt, it releases a lot of energy into the crust above it, and we end up producing these fairly large earthquakes. So it's really the geological location of Taiwan, which is quite unfortunate, just because it's located in such a geologically active area.
So when we've got these plates moving on this treacle and it moves in this way, can we expect more movement, which is a much more scientific way of asking, can we expect more tremors?
Yes, absolutely. So if you look at it, in the 20th century, there's been about 23 earthquakes of above magnitude 7 occurring in that area, specifically related to Taiwan. So there's an earthquake of magnitude above 7 every practically 4 to 5 years on average. It's been a while since we've had such a big one. And if we look at the historical records further, you look at these Richter scale gradations of earthquakes, you can see that above 7 to 8 are found maybe every 50 years, respectively. And that's because this movement is continuous. It's about at the rate of 8 centimeters a year, which sounds very slow, but it's faster than what your fingernails would grow. And geologically, that's very fast. So it's just that the plates are moving very quickly. They build up friction relative to each other, and then that friction breaks. So there's a rupture along those plate boundaries. And that rupture, it's a continual process, and it will continue until basically you've eaten up all of the one plate. It's been completely pushed down under the other. And at that point, that'll be millions of years from now, then, this process would cease.
We know an earthquake under the sea can create a tsunami, and if I remember, I think it was my matric geography then, to try and predict the tsunami, you sort of take into account the size of the ocean and the depth of the quake and how far away the land is. Can we quite accurately predict tsunamis? In this case, there was a tsunami warning.
So in Taiwan, it's quite interesting. If you look at the tsunamis and their occurrences there, the tsunamis are not quite, what we'd expect when we look. For previous examples, say we were looking at that Sumatran tsunami, which was devastating, the Boxing Day tsunamis of 2004. In those instances, that was a relatively shallow earthquake and a movement along a boundary that produced a lot of water pushed over a massive surface area across most of the Pacific Ocean and then around into the Indian Ocean and around. In this instance here, the waters are quite deep, and one of the big things is this is such an active area. So there's been a lot of research done on this purely because of its effect on China. So is there a possible tsunami effect on China? But most of the tsunamis that we do see are actually relatively small. So like a 30 centimeter high wave, but that doesn't sound like much, but that can be a fairly large flooding inundation, but not these destructive type of tsunamis that we expect, where there's just massive walls of water, just tumbling ships and everything around. So here the tsunamis aren't that large, but they can produce enough stuff to produce flooding along the coasts, to produce spills across low-lying waterways, that sort of thing. But the tsunami risk isn't nearly as big. I mean, yes, maybe located for Taiwan, but everything's inland of that. So China and that are actually fairly risk-free in terms of major tsunamis coming from these trenches and these subduction zones.
Professor, thank you. Professor Andrew Grootes, a professor of marine geology at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. 27 minutes now after 6 o'clock.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
You call it the original Soweto Derby. Very controversial so early in the morning.
Well, it was a classic case of deja vu. Both Orlando Pirates, as well as another team, SuperSport United, they drew, missing crucial opportunities to close the gap with second place Stellenbosch FC. Pirates had to claw back to a 1-1 draw against Morocco Swallows, with Patrick Masquani securing a point after Swallows' early lead. Here's the Pirates coach, Jose Riveiro.
And the running for the second position this season is going to be tough. There's different candidates in a very good form, with the ambition to be there. So it's going to be, I think, an entertaining fight for that position that probably is going to be resolved in the last game, I'm sure. And we're going to do everything in order to at least finish in the second position. It's our our intention. We want to go to Africa next season, but
Now, Supersport United, despite a 2-goal advantage at halftime, succumbed 2-2 against Golden Arrows, with the Arrows team making a second-half comeback. Elsewhere, Chippa United bolstered their survival hopes with a convincing win over Cape Town Spurs, while TX Galaxy moved into the top 8 following a resounding 3-0 victory against Royal AM. Elsewhere, Arsenal kept their title chase on track with a 2-0 victory over relegation-threatened Luton, rising to the top of the Premier League table as a result, 1 point ahead of second place Liverpool. Now, Jurgen Klopp's side, they meet Sheffield United at Anfield with the chances to reclaim that lead. Elsewhere, Phil Foden scored a sensational hat-trick as Manchester City beat Aston Villa 4-1 at the Etihad Stadium to keep the pressure on their title rivals. Cricket now, the Proteas women's cricket team faced a challenging defeat, with Sri Lanka securing a historic series win. The final T20 at Buffalo Park saw a stunning performance from Chamari Atapattu, who notched up 73 runs, and Harsita Samarawikrama supported with 54 not out, propelling Sri Lanka to their first ever series victory over South Africa. Now, despite Laura Wolfart's half-century, the Proteas were unable to defend their total of 155. Now, both teams will be setting their sights on the upcoming ODIs. In the meantime, Ryan Rickleton and Riza Henrys put on a show with the bat, while Luto Sipamla and Ngaba Peter had fun with the ball as the Lions secured a 132-run bonus point victory over the Western Province in their Cricket South Africa T20 Challenge match. All happened at Newlands in Cape Town last night, while West Indies' Sunil Narayan smashed 85 to lead the Kolkata Knight Riders to their second best ever Indian Premier League total of 272 for 7 in a crushing 106-run victory over the Delhi Capitals yesterday. And that's how we wrap up Sport with Sunrise. More for you, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning. In the next half hour, we'll look a little bit more at violent crime after those 2 big shootouts yesterday. You with SFM leading the conversation. Still no load shedding, 6:30.
Thank you, Stephen. In your headlines, speculation is rife that the former National Assembly Speaker, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, will hand herself over to the police. She resigned yesterday as National Assembly Speaker and as Member of Parliament. Meanwhile, some opposition parties say Mapisa-Nqakula should be arrested in light of corruption allegations against her. The DA Chief Whip, Siviwe Gwagube, says with their motion of no confidence in her now moot, the law enforcement agencies should press on with investigations against her. And the Israeli army has made a rare admission of fault after its Monday attack on humanitarian convoy killed 7 aid workers of the World Central Kitchen. A spokesperson for the government says preliminary findings showed that the tragic error had occurred due to what he called a misidentification. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
When we last spoke, we alluded to a problem around Samrand Road in the Midrand area. It's a crash and it's blocking 2 lanes. So that traffic that's left Pretoria using Route 1 down towards Joburg this morning is already starting to backlog from around about John Foster Drive. 2 lanes closed on the N1 South coming into the Samrand exit, and it's looking heavy. R21 at this stage, after yesterday's major delay debacle, is moving all right. If you're en route towards the airport, we'll keep an eye on that. There's roadworks at both Clayville and then after Clayville as you go down towards the Benoni exit. So it's always a good idea to make sure you've got plenty of extra time to get through just any potential delays that form up. Yesterday, the delays for some people were getting on 2 hours. So that's an extreme problem if you're heading down for a flight connection leaving Pretoria along that route. We'll keep a watch on that for you constantly. Durban side, if you're inbound from the south coast, a couple of trucks have collided at Prospect, and that's a heavy backlog from Twinney Hill. You might be able to get past, you might be taken off at Joyner Road and shipped onto some local routes through the Isipingo and Prospecton area, but it is heavy. Cape Town, a crash on the N2 inbound by Jan Smuts Drive. That's pushing traffic back towards the airport. That's heavy this morning along that run-in. And some delays out of Mitchell's Plain, both the M7 and Jakes Curville Drive and R300 queuing up in towards that junction as you head out towards Samora, Michelle and Philippi side. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Jimmy Moyaha, our business show host, of course, in for us this week. Jimmy, good morning. How are you doing? Jimmy, good morning. Are you with us? Oh, seem to have lost Jimmy Moya there. Sorry about that. Have him with you in just a moment, but just find out what is happening in the Asian markets this morning and how all of that's panning out. So, yep, just to try and organise that for you. Sorry about the delay. We'll, of course, hear from Sipho Mantula in just a moment. Also, in the next little while, important conversations around violent crime, and some of them have been really very difficult at the moment. When you look at the number of people who've been shot dead, it shows you how serious this is and what exactly is happening. So, yeah, we'll find out more for you about all of that to come in the next little while. So those things to come as well. Also, don't forget, by the way, the full reaction to the resignation of the National Assembly Speaker, Nosivuma Pisangakula. We'll have that for you coming from 7 o'clock, and a lot of people have an awful lot to say about that. So that'll be part of the conversation that we'll be having as well. So all of those conversations to come. We'll be looking at those issues. Also, don't forget, from 8:30 this morning in your mediated conversation, we'll look at the changing sports calendar. I think that's going to be very important. Jimmy Mayaha with us now. Jimmy, good morning. There you are. I thought we'd lost you for a minute.
Morning, Stephen. Yes, something must have happened. We have been having trouble over the last couple of hours with things like WhatsApp. Maybe the cables are down.
What's happening in Asia and the US?
US markets had an interesting day yesterday. We got some data points out on the private jobs market. The ADP numbers came in bang on target. The private sector creating 184,000 jobs there. We also had a speech, or rather a commentary from Fed Chair Jerome Powell around interest rates, and we're still sticking to the narrative that we're not going to see any interest rate cuts anytime soon. They want to see more data points that support interest rate cuts, and that also kind of sent the market into what we thought would have been a normal reaction to that. We saw that the S&P closed out in the green about 0.1%, with Nasdaq up about 0.25%. The Dow was down about 0.1%. In Asian trade, that translated to a bit of a mixed bag on that side. We've got Hong Kong down about 1.2%, while Tokyo is up 1.6%. South Korea down 1.3% at this stage, with China down anywhere from 0.18% on the main index to 0.3% on the top 50. We see that markets like the Philippines are down 0.4%, and if we look at markets in India, those are sitting flat at the moment. If we look at commodities pricing, yesterday we saw that gold was doing exceptionally well. We've seen that the gold futures have been above $2,300 an ounce, with gold as well touching $2,300 an ounce. In fact, currently sitting at exactly $2,300 an ounce there at the moment, with copper prices up around 0.5% at say $4 there. Palladium prices also up around 0.3%. Brent crude etching closer to $90 a barrel, sitting at $89.67 at this stage. On the currency side of it, the rand continuing to hold its own against the US dollar, sitting at 1867, a little further away from that 19 rand level we saw late in March. Against the euro, sitting at 20 rand and 25 cents, and against the British pound at 23 rand and 63 cents. If anyone's watching any cryptos, then the price of Bitcoin still sitting at the $65,000 level there. So $65,374 a coin, and Ethereum around $3,276, while Solana $181. All cryptos are in the red at the moment, largely off the back of some recent runs that they've had, and we're seeing some market cooling down, so to speak, at this stage, looking to see when the next rally will kick off.
And then what's happening with copper prices? They look like they're going to hit new highs.
Yes, copper prices have hit recent highs in Asian trade at this moment, largely off the back of the optimism around Chinese markets. Obviously, China being the top importer of copper in the world and in the Asia region. It makes it very easy for them to come out with a statement or with prospects of increasing production and increasing demand in the copper space, and that's giving a lot of fuel to the market at the moment. The market, as I said, was up about 0.5% in Asian trade at this stage, and this coupled with the slight weakness we're seeing in the dollar at the moment off the sentiments that Fed Chair Jay Powell said, as well as just the US markets in general, giving copper companies or copper pricing a lot more to look forward to. We're seeing that Chinese copper smelters have been looking at output cuts recently, as much as 10%, depending on where they're sitting in the business. But this could be avoided if we see that demand would return to the market. And I think just from the output cut concerns, coupled with everything else that's happening, we're starting to see that markets are saying that maybe copper prices are a little discounted, and that's driving the price a little higher at the moment.
Jimmy Moyaha, thank you very much indeed. Do appreciate it. More from him in an hour. More, of course, in the Business Show later this evening. 22 minutes to 7.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Ross Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning. All right, what's happened in Senegal? The new president, you were telling us about him yesterday, from president to president in just a few days. Who's his new prime minister?
Stephen, he has now appointed the firebrand politician and the key backer, Ousmane Sonko, as the first prime minister in his first act as the West African nation leader. And in retrospect now, Sonko will have to give him a full list of the proposed ministerial appointments. Now, what we see, France has been observing this. And remember, Sonko was at the center of that 2-year standoff with the state, where he was accused to be the instigator, to be a bad influencer to the young people, despite other charges that they have charged Sonko. And I know this week some of the media were saying, but will fire upon Sonko because he has a criminal record. But this is a happened, Stephen. Ousmane Sonko is a new prime minister of Senegal, and both of them, actually, when Sonko accepted this role, he was saying that Faye was having a serious, heavy responsibility. There was no way he can go alone in ruling Senegal. So there was a need for him to bring a prime minister, but also, like I said, Sonko will be the one, coming with a list of the proposed ministers who will be taking over different positions. The issue is not position, Stephen, is to deal with the youth unemployment and to deal with the nationalization of the oil and the gas and the fishing sectors in Senegal.
And then in Gabon, the national dialogue there, they're looking at a return to the constitutional order?
Very important, even if it was from a father to an uncle or a cousin to an uncle. This is General Brice Oligui Nguema, who called that open dialogue yesterday, Stephen. It was on a national TV in Libreville Sports Complex. It has brought civil society, politicians, the youth leaders, just to pave the way for Gabon to say where from Gabon, because General Nguema was to rule for 24 months until they hold elections in August 2025. Remember, he took over power from his own uncle in August 2023. Now, this national dialogue was important for Gabon now to look at setting up the presidential elections and also for Nguema to hand over power to the civilians.
And then in Zimbabwe, the government there declaring a state of disaster because of the drought.
Stephen, it's the same thing that happened last week when I spoke about the neighboring Malawi, also when Chakwera asked for money. The same what Tambuzo Mulanga was asking. He said he needs 2 billion for humanitarian assistance. And this drought that is in Zimbabwe is also due to El Nino-induced drought, which is more than 80% of the country fell below the normal rainfall. Now, Mnangagwa is appealing to the United Nations, to the local businesses, and to the faith organization. I said it before, Stephen, once we have Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe will come, and that's why you have a challenge now in terms of how do you deal with the food shortages when you have also the climate uncertainty of drought in Zimbabwe. So this is a challenge also for the SADC, for the AU, how to assist their member states when they go through this.
And then the Seychelles and the Netherlands, they're working on fighting cryptocurrency crimes.
Stephen, this is interesting because the ambassador of Netherlands in Seychelles was engaging with the President Ramaphosa at the State House. And what came out there, it was the issue of cryptocurrency, how to deal with cryptocurrency in both countries in terms of also dealing with the drug trafficking in the island of Seychelles, but also Netherlands. Their prime minister will be visiting Seychelles. So this was a meeting before the main meeting. We know that Seychelles and Netherlands have established diplomatic relations in April 1977. Hence, this meeting was important for them to look back at what were the agreements on their bilaterals, but it appears that cryptocurrency and also the issue of drug trafficking is worrying both countries.
And then in our archives, you're taking us back to the 4th of April, 1939.
It will have been 85 years today, Stephen, and I hope that you'll be raising a lot of things. Things must change. We'll have been talking about Mama Uya Chabula. We are talking of Ramapolo Yu Masigela, who was born on this day. in Witbank, in Mpumalanga, a person who went to exile in 1961, even just after Shavilanga massacre, worked with Panas Wangwa, and also worked with people like Chifa Semenya, and also with Memire Makeba and Abdullah Ibrahim. Hugh Masekela, a great person who we know, Stephen, he also got the claim for the best contemporary pop performance instrumental that year, that was in 1968. A great person who we lost at early years, Stephen, but he was a really cultural activist for this country. Asante Sana SG, as we're still leading the conversation, SAFM observing the Freedom Month.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantulap, thank you so much. Back tomorrow, more from our continent through the day here on SAFM, 17 minutes to 7.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Masanda wanna trust their creativity to ensure Yanga gets nothing from Mzansi's capital city. But the gentlemen from the east want to leave Kabuyelo in tears. This is the second leg quarterfinal battle of the CAF Champions League. Experience Africa's beautiful game, Mamelodi Sundowns versus Young Africans, on Friday, 5 April at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
Just gone 7:15. Good morning. You know the number 086 000 2032. Well, several incidents of shootouts involving police and suspects in the last 24 hours in Marion Hill in KwaZulu-Natal yesterday. Police shot dead 9 suspects. The local community says they were part of a gang responsible for a series of murders, robberies and rapes in that area. And in Mpumalanga, 5 people were killed in a shootout with police there. They were believed to be part of a gang involved in cash and transit heists. Police in KwaZulu-Natal have now killed 28 people in shootouts since the start of the year. It's also emerged, by the way, earlier this week, that on a list of the 20 worst cities in the world for crime, 5 of them come from our country. Professor Kolofelo Rakubu is a criminologist and head of the Department of Law, Safety and Security Management at the Tshwane University of Technology. Professor Rakubu, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning to the listeners.
We see this pandemic of violent crime, and I know the numbers say that the incidents, the number of incidents is stabilizing, but crimes involving guns are really prevalent. Are we any closer to understanding why there is so much violent crime in our country at the moment?
As the country, now let's just analyze the significant shift in violent crime and also the normal epidemiology of gun use in crime. So now we also understand that this is deeply embedded within our social fabric, because if and that suggests we know near ending the violent crime or utilization of guns. Why is that? Because of the easy access to firearms. So in South Africa, to get a firearm is not even a train smash. You can get it anywhere, right? And also the culture of violence, and also what also perpetuates utilization of guns in commission of crime is the chronic dysfunction in the firearm registry, issues with ammunition, and chronic dysfunction in the crime intelligence. So for quite some time, we've not been able to identify, or even as we capture data, there's not been segregation of the firearm-related violence or death. So all has been bulked in one basket for South Africa to understand what is required to efficiently respond to issues of gun violence. Yes, there's availability, but why not even have a targeted police operation or specialized firearm unit? Because we know where our problems lie. But now we see a shift in police response, particularly with the death approach. We understand that the police has been having issues with response, and those aligned with challenges with the Criminal Procedure Act. Hence, the call for the Act's review, particularly with when to use discretion and search and seizure, especially Section 49. But now we're seeing a paradigm shift, because before you shoot, I'm sure they should, because we are unable to even analyze to what extent do the police decide to shoot. But we see a death approach, which now becomes a generic deterrence and is sending a very stern message to perpetrators out there that should you come for them, they are going to come for you. You understand? So now, and with the shootout, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, we now have to tap into the history of gun violence and the gun usage and police response. But we also applaud the provincial commissioner, for example, because it looks like this death approach is not going anywhere. And for that, we also wish that they could urgently tap into the necessity for specialized firearm unit. You understand? And also the gun violence prevention strategy, which is now going to be intelligence driven. And again, for that to work, they need to strengthen the SAPS and the justice system in general. Otherwise, we're still going to be having this problem.
It comes back to what people have said so many times: leadership, reform, all of these things. I think voters at the moment, Professor, I don't want to put this in such stark terms, but let me use this phrase. I think voters want criminals shot dead. If I were living in Marion Hill and it had been my daughter who had to live through what a young woman there has had to live through, you know, and I think that's understandable. I think that feeling, that is understandable. Are there other things we can do to reduce this appalling level of violence?
There are many. Remember, before we arrive to that, the culture of violence, which now violence becoming normalized and accepted way of communication in our society, violence being seen as a legitimate means to resolve dispute. It starts there. The minute we can now deal with that, you understand, then we can be able to come up with strategies that are going to be adoptable and implementable. We now have to tap into issues of whose responsibility is it? Because the minute there's a gun usage, let's tap into issues of crime in communities. What causes this crime? The issues of socioeconomic condition, like the link between socioeconomic disadvantage and crime. Those have been long-standing. So you find that the policies that are introduced do not have those in mind. And now you find the police having to deal with a hungry offender or a frustrated offender. So the minute now we go top level to deal with gun violence, we still have issues on the ground, issues of violence on the ground, crime level due to high unemployment, because high level of unemployment means that the probability of gaining a legal income will be low, whilst high level of legal income simultaneously increase the payoff from what? Criminal activities, as well as increasing the opportunities or cost of criminal activity. So we need to go on the ground. Yes, we can have all other strategies to deal with gun violence. And I personally, the death approach, I think that is suitable, looking into the crime landscape in South Africa, an eye for an eye in that regard. However, there are others still learning on the ground due to other socioeconomic conditions, due to the culture of violence, due to corruption and increasing sophisticated organized networks that are not stopping because they are not dealt with efficiently. So we need, like they've been proposing, a whole of government, whole of a society approach, but we need that the politics of crime be efficiently attended to. When now resources come into place, don't put a paper on the table and not beef it up with the necessary resources, finances. Municipalities need to budget efficiently and incorporate issues of safety in their IDPs, because now as they talk manifestos, they are promising so much in safety, yet after elections they don't even remember what they promised when it comes to safety.
Professor, thank you so much. Professor Kolofelo Rakubo is a criminologist, head of the Department of Law, Safety and Security Management at the Tshwane University of Technology. 7 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Two major delays coming out of Pretoria this morning towards Joburg and towards the airport. The N1 queuing up towards Samrand Road, a big crash there. 2 lanes are closed. Traffic back beyond Brockfontein and back towards John Foster Drive. That looks particularly heavy. And the R21 now queuing as you approach the construction zone just before Olifantsfontein Road. So as you come down into that Clayville area, it gets pretty heavy. R24 slight hold up through Edenvale onto the N12 merge. There's a crash on the side of the highway there, causing a delay. Now, if you're coming off the KZN South Coast and you're en route towards the airport, a couple of queues to work through. One is a crash by Prospecton just before the Prospecton exit. That's heavy from sort of Twenty Hill, Toti area. And then you've got a breakdown before Spaghetti Junction and the roadworks after Spaghetti Junction. So that's your second queue as you come up from the M7 Bluff exit. N13 leaving Pinetown towards Paradise Valley. Usual backlog there into the construction zones. Very slow, pushing back towards St John's Avenue Bridge territory. Cape Town, the N2 inbound. A crash at Jan Smuts Drive this morning is pushing traffic all the way back to the airport. That looks heavy. Jan Smuts Drive itself moving north out of Athlone up towards Klipfontein Road. That's a heavier queue than normal. M5's under pressure from Ottery all the way through to Maitland, and the N1 backlogging from Belleville right through to Kuburg. Get a change. No gaps in that N1. It is a busy run through this morning. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Aston Villa have found comfort on the top half, and they want maximum points to retain their decent position.
Putting back, and this time, Zaniolo is on! The equaliser belongs to Aston Villa!
Yet the Bees want to cause havoc and deprive the Villains by registering an away victory.
We saw tried one of them in the first half, he's finished it in the second, and Brentford have turned this round.
This is the Premier League. Catch the exciting clash between Aston Villa FC and Brentford FC on Saturday, 6 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
5 minutes to 7 the time. Well, over the last few weeks, you would have seen a lot of reporting about a series of polls all predicting big changes in our election. Some people claim the ANC will fall to, some of the predictions are like 40%. Others have said MK will be the biggest party in KwaZulu-Natal after the polls. But there's some voices emerging now saying we need to be quite careful with how we look at these polls. Daryl Swanepoel is the chief executive of the Inclusive Society Institute. Daryl, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Good to be with you again.
So we see headlines that scream the result of a new poll, promising huge changes after the election. How should we approach those headlines?
Yes, well, you see, this is a problem that we have is if the incorrect information is continually beamed out to society, a situation is created where people believe that the current ruling party will definitely lose power. And then when the election result comes and that is not so, or it is not to the extent that it's being suggested in the polls, then credibility in the electoral system comes into question. So, for example, one of the polls that we did, the raw data said that the ANC will get 33%. But we explained to the people that that is not what you should get. That's not what they would get in an election, because included in that figure was unaccounted for don't knows, won't says, not registered to vote, etc. and also a mismatch between the registered voters and the eligible voters, which creates different scenarios. And in fact, we had said that if an election were to be held tomorrow, the ANC would get somewhere between 48 and 52% of the poll of the election. But the headline said 33%. And that creates the impression that the ANC is certainly going to lose the next election, which might not be so.
There are all sorts of other things to this. So I mean, we do need to look at who is doing the polls. So some people do polls because that's their business. Some people put polls in the field because they have their own sort of agenda. And it's not a political party that does this. It'll be someone else.
Yes, you see, polls are very scientific. And, it's a difference if you do a poll via the telephone. You're only reaching a certain segment of the community, whereas if you're doing polls face to face, you have the ability to get to really reflect what South African society is. So one has to look at who is doing the poll, and it must be credible. And like our poll is done through Ipsos, but there's a number of credible polls out there that come out that are showing, in reality, they're showing that the ANC, yes, is certainly losing power, but not necessarily to the extent of certainly going to leave the union buildings. And the other side of it is that the opposition parties are creating this impression that they are on the cusp of taking the seat of power. Whereas in reality, it is not the case. But you're quite right. You have to also get a sense as to the methodology behind putting that poll together. And a lot of people are very quiet about how they they've come to that result. I think polling must be open and transparent, and the public need to know who has done the poll and how the poll has been put together.
When I was a child and I was looking forward to a sunny day because I wanted to swim in the sea or something, or play football or whatever it was, and if I was told the night before there'll be sun shining tomorrow and it's not, when I wake up, I'd be very angry. If I was told the night before it's going to be raining and look, your game's going to be called off, then I was fine. The point I'm trying to get to is the frustration and the anger of a dashed expectation. People are manipulating our expectations, aren't they?
That is the crux of the problem, yes. And we see that when those expectations are dashed with across the globe, it is littered with unstable situations that are created when that expectation is dashed. And then people start saying, yeah, but it's the IEC are biased, the IEC are not administering it correctly in that way. That is not the case. It is the case that people are brought under the misapprehension that the change is going to be greater than what the reality is. I'm not saying that the party's fortunes aren't changing. They are certainly changing. The ruling party is losing support. The opposition are gaining support, but we just need to temper our expectations and get a dose of reality.
Daryl Swanepoel, thank you, Chief Executive of the Inclusive Society Institute. All right, coming up, more reaction for you about the resignation as Speaker of the National Assembly of Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula, also resigning as a Member of Parliament yesterday. This is important developments, and of course everyone's expecting something else to happen, if you know what I mean. We'll get reaction for you on that. You with SAFM leading the conversation at 7 o'clock.
Thank you, Stephen. In your top stories, speculation rife that former NA Speaker will hand herself over to police, and Israel admits to error in killing 8 workers in Gaza. This is SAFM News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. We start with this developing story now. Speculation is rife that former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula will hand herself over to the police. She resigned yesterday both as National Assembly Speaker and Member of Parliament. Mapisa Ngakula said in her resignation letter that her decision was not an admission of guilt regarding the corruption allegations against her. The High Court in Pretoria recently struck off the roll in her urgent application to interdict police from arresting her. Last month, the NPA raided her home in Johannesburg, and this is where Criselda Lewis now reports from.
I've had no sight of any of the occupants inside the house here this morning, but certainly we'll wait to see what unfolds as the morning progresses. But speculation at this point is that she's likely, you'd know, over the past couple of days, including yesterday, there had been some speculation that she will hand herself over to authorities. That speculation continues this morning, but there certainly seems to be a likelihood that will take place.
Meanwhile, some opposition parties say Mapisa Ngakula should be arrested in light of corruption allegations against her. The DA chief whip, Sivyo Kwahube, says with the motion of no confidence in her now irrelevant, law enforcement agencies should continue investigations against her.
We've got to make sure that we enforce this culture of accountability within our public service, that it's not enough that one must be politically connected in order for you to evade accountability. Of course, this means that the motion that I have tabled, the motion of no confidence that I have tabled against the Speaker in Parliament will now no longer be relevant because, of course, we pursued this with the intention of achieving this very outcome.
And the EFF says Mapisa Ngakula should be arrested as a matter of agency. Zolega Kodasha reports.
Just this week, she brazenly sought to interdict her own arrest, demonstrating a flagrant disregard for the gravity of the charges against her and proving that she has no genuine interest in cooperating with law enforcement agencies. Any individual truly dedicated to justice would willingly submit themselves to the appropriate authorities and cooperate with investigations. The EFF reiterates that Mapisa Ngakula must be arrested and considers her resignation as just one step towards restoring accountability and transparency in Parliament. We call for swift action to be taken to investigate and prosecute her and all those implicated in corruption and malfeasance.
And that is the voice of EFF National Spokesperson Sinao Tambo. On to other news now. The Sol Plaatje municipality in Kimberley in the Northern Cape says it's ready for the planned water shutdown that is set to start tonight and end on Monday next week. The municipality says the shutdown is necessary to fix major leaks due to damaged pipes. Residents have been urged to store water despite the municipality dispatching water tanks to their areas. The municipality's executive mayor is Kagisho Sonyoni.
Repairs are to be effected on 4 major leaks on the bulk pipeline from Riverton to Kimberley that have been the source of excessive water losses and threatening to collapse our water supply. We will be enforcing emergency basic water supply by placing JoJo tanks in most of the wards and at accessible spots. Special supply provision has been made for hospitals, old age homes and other critical centers.
Fire victims in Mfuleni on the Cape Flats are hard at work rebuilding their homes following a fire in which 2 people were killed last weekend. About 800 people were left homeless after 4 separate fires in areas including Mfuleni, Dunun and Langa. Mfuleni resident is Fundile Kaga.
I don't have nothing, Mama. I don't have material. I don't have nothing. Only this material I have.
And are you scared for the winter?
Yes, because it's raining in winter.
Yeah.
And finally, the Israeli army has made a rare admission of fault after its Monday attack on a humanitarian convoy killed 7 aid workers of World Central Kitchen. A spokesperson for the government said preliminary findings show a tragic error had occurred due to what they called a misidentification. The charity founder said the convoy had been deliberately targeted for more than a kilometer until everybody was dead, despite being clearly marked. U.S. State Department spokesperson is Matthew Miller.
Accountability is appropriate, then there of course should be accountability. And we will wait to see the results of that investigation before we pass judgment on it. The Israelis have said to us, and they've said publicly, that they intend to conduct this investigation swiftly. We want to see it wrapped up as soon as possible and see them put in place any measures to prevent this from happening again in the future.
Recapping your top story, speculation is rife that the former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula will hand herself over to police. For SAFM News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 7:30.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sunrise Sports headlines, cricket in a surprising turn. The Proteas women lose their first ever series to Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, the Blitzboks are charging up for a thrilling showdown at the Hong Kong Sevens rugby tournament. Details just before 7:30.
SAFM. guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And if you're just joining us, a major backlog of traffic coming out of Pretoria to Joburg this morning. It's the N1 South, quite a big crash scene by Samrand Road. Traffic's heavy across all lanes, all the way back through towards John Foster Drive in Centurion. The side road coming off the N1 onto the old Joburg Road down to Midrand's pretty heavy with diverting pressures. As you can imagine, R21 queuing up to Clayville into the roadwork section. That's looking a little bit busier than it did yesterday. Amanzimtoti through to Durban, a truck crash in the Prospecton area is still holding things up. And then once you get through that, you're pretty much back into the traffic from the M7 up into Spaghetti Junction, a breakdown before the junction, and then you've got the roadworks shortly thereafter. Cape Town, a crash, N1 inbound after Okavango Road, so coming through from Kraaifontein, that's reasonably busy. And the N2 queuing up from the airport past an earlier crash at Jan Smuts all the way through to Hospital Bend. There's a bit of backlogging on the M3 this morning. Again, another busy one. If you're on that route coming in from the south, you'll hit a wall of traffic from Constantia up Wynberg Hill towards Paradise Road in the Bishop's Court area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7:07. Good morning. You with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. All right, awaiting developments around Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula, the former Speaker now of the National Assembly. A lot of speculation suggesting that, in fact, she might be about to be arrested literally in the next little while. There are journalists outside her house. There are journalists outside the police station where people expect her to report to. We'll try and get an update for you on that in just a moment. Also, of course, reaction to her resignation as Speaker. And there's a lot to talk about when you consider the role that she's played over the years. All of that to come. It's 7:08.
Masanda wanna trust their creativity to ensure Yanga gets nothing from Mzansi's capital city. But the gentlemen from the east want to leave Kabuyelo in tears. This is the second leg quarter-final battle of the CAF Champions League. Experience Africa's beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns versus Young Africans on Friday, 5 April at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game. Unforgettable happens when the young and the old know they can surf, snorkel, fish, enjoy whale watching, and end the day with Sundowners Neshisa Nyama. KwaZulu-Natal is a jewel waiting to happen. Ziyakhipha. With hiking, horse riding, biking, ziplining, and mountain biking adventures waiting for the fearless and the bold. Unforgettable happens here. Zwagala. Brought to you by Tourism KwaZulu-Natal.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
7:09. Good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Well, developments we expect around Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula. We don't quite know what's going to happen with the former Speaker. She resigned as Speaker last night. A statement from her overnight. She's no longer the Speaker, also resigning as a Member of Parliament. She also said the claims against her require her to step down to uphold the sanctity of Parliament. But she says she's very careful to say this is not an admission of guilt. The NPA has said it wants to charge Mapisa Ngakula with corruption because they have evidence she received over 4 million rand in cash in a series of payments from a defence contractor when she was the Minister of Defence. Saviwe Gachube is the Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance in the National Assembly. Saviwe, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to SAFM listeners.
How do you view the resignation of Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula? Do you think she had any other choice?
No, I think firstly we welcome the resignation, as I've spoken to you a number of times. I mean, this is what we've long called for. Our view was that she should have resigned 3 weeks ago, and when she did not do so, that is why we brought the motion of no confidence against her last week in Parliament. And so, of course, that motion of no confidence that I tabled was in pursuit of her removed from this position. And so we view this as a victory for accountability and for Parliament. However, Stephen, I must now indicate that while the motion of no confidence does fall away and the ethics complaint that regards this matter does fall away, there is the powers and privileges complaint that pertains to the salary hike of the Secretary to Parliament, Mr. Xolile George, which the Speaker and the Chairperson, Mr. Masondo, are the subject of. And the Powers and Privileges Act is quite clear that one can be criminally charged as both an ordinary member of the public or a member of the executive or a member of parliament. So we still want to make sure that we get to the bottom of that, because of course these are big sums of money and we can't let that matter go.
The fact that she's also resigned as a member of parliament, is that important in all of this? She didn't just resign as speaker yesterday, she also resigned as an MP.
It is important. I suppose in terms of her strategy, in that because then she doesn't become the subject, for instance, of ongoing investigations, like for instance the ethics committee, and so I think that it is important. But also, Stephen, I do want to also point out what it does now, what this resignation and now the vacancy which has been created does, is that it triggers a vacancy in Parliament, and that's why we will, as of this morning, after this conversation, be writing to Parliament to say that we think it's important, as per the provision of the Constitution, that a suitable speaker be elected, even with the short period before Parliament rises. So I think it was a way of ensuring that she severs ties with the institution, so that she may evade some of the questions. But the one that is related to, of course, the salary hike, because of course the SCP still earns that 70% salary hike, and the chairperson is still there. So we must make sure that that is resolved.
Zaviwa, do you believe that Parliament as an institution's been damaged by all of this? I mean, it's been, sort of a month of these claims. I mean, I realise the claims were first instituted some time ago, but really, in the public domain, it's been a sort of month of these claims around the Speaker who's now resigned.
Of course. I mean, I think, Stephen, I mean, it has in a big way, because this is, while we've been dealing with the number of, compromised individuals in Parliament, and asking these very difficult questions about how do we hold people accountable. Obviously, the fact that now it has been somebody who leads the institution, such as the Speaker, who has been the subject of allegations of this kind, and also somebody who refused to then do what was right and resign. Of course, it does taint the image of Parliament. I think a lot of South Africans don't trust that Parliament is the place at which their interests are prioritized. I think a lot of South Africans have over the years come to believe that Parliament is essentially a refuge for those who have had failed political careers, or those who are ethnically compromised. And that's the work that we need to start to do to undo that reputation, because Parliament does not belong to politicians. It belongs to the people of South Africa. And if they don't believe that that is a place where their issues are resolved, then we're doing something wrong. And so that's why it's important to instill a culture of accountability as much as we can.
Saviwa Grootes, thank you. The Chief Whip of the DA in the National Assembly with SAFM, 14 minutes after 7, awaiting developments now around the former Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula and what is going to happen this morning. Sandile Swana is a political analyst and expert on governance. Sandile, good morning to you. I mean, this is such a big story to have a Speaker of the National Assembly being accused by the NPA of receiving cash. She's now had to resign. What does this tell us about our society and about our politics?
Thank you so much. First of all, I think we need to be careful that as citizens, especially, we don't implicate ourselves in the problems of a failed political party, which is the African National Congress, that is running a failing state. So we need to be careful of that. For instance, I'm sure that it was Grootes that you had there speaking on behalf of the DA, totally at variance and differing totally with the ANC and the misconduct of Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. So we can't incriminate ourselves in the misconduct of the ruling party that is a failed party. Now, what does it say about us? And I think I need to refer you to what we have said must be done in Parliament in terms of our Constitution. Our Constitution directs that the Speaker must be somebody who is impartial, and one of the values that the Speaker must safeguard is the value of integrity. and the Speaker must be the custodian of the integrity of our Parliament and the integrity of the executive. So, so a person who is going to be impartial and be a custodian of integrity cannot be secretly receiving funds. And it was not us as the citizen who appointed Nosiviwe Nosiviwe Mapisa Nqakula to be the Speaker, after discovering that she was using the defense airplanes as a private taxi for people she was smuggling into South Africa and taking her comrades to Zimbabwe, and the recklessness with which she handled the insurrection of July 2021, we did not appoint her. It was Ramaphosa and the ANC who did that. So we cannot incriminate ourselves in that. That is not the type of people we are, which is why today we have members of parliament saying she must be subjected to a vote of no confidence, let alone the fact that she has now resigned.
Do you think the ANC asked her to go? Do you think she had no option, that they were no longer going to support her?
Well, I think that it was clear that the ANC did not want to do the another Pala Pala, because the Pala Pala thing was majoritarianism, which had the unfortunate component of taking our legal practitioners and legal scholars and throwing them under the bus, throwing Judge Sandile Ngcobo under the bus, who had written an erudite and incisive report about the misconduct of President Cyril Ramaphosa regarding Pala Pala, and that he needed to undergo an impeachment process. The ANC offering anti-science type of reports that this thing must be thrown into the dustbin and cancelled, and voted using its majority in parliament to impugn the integrity of Sandile, Justice Sandile Ngcobo. So that was a problem, and they could not do that again for Nosiviwe Mapisa Nqakula. They are unable to do it for Jacob Zuma, who's demanding that they do it for him as well. So there is a problem. They can't offer that protection racket anymore.
One of the issues here is that she's accused of taking money from a defence contractor. And we know that the South African National Defence Force is underfunded. I mean, right now we have soldiers in the DRC that don't seem to have enough toilets. I mean, can you imagine? Is it possible one of the reasons the South African National Defence Force and our soldiers are in this position because of what might have been corruption in the SANDF?
At this juncture, you have a combination of factors which has two sides of the same coin. One is the corruption, and that corruption, on the other hand, goes with negligence. Because when we are running a defense force, I think one of the major generals once pointed out in history that an army marches on its stomach. So if the army is not well resourced, it cannot march into war. It cannot march into battle. It cannot remain in battle without the resources. So it means that if you are the minister in charge of defense, you need to look after the resources so that the army is well funded, well provided for at all times. But if your preoccupation is your own stomach, what you can suck out of the defense force, then you have a problem, let alone the fact that Nombasa was married to one of the generals of the army. So this was a double deal whereby it was an inside job to loot the army.
Sandile, the other point to make, perhaps, is that the NPA seems to have been very strong in its determination to press ahead here. Could this be proof that the NPA is reformed, that it'll go ahead and charge politicians with corruption?
It is not necessarily proof that the NPA is reformed, because we all know that there are many comrades and many other criminals who have been charged and prosecuted successfully, depending who handles your case. I mean, John Block is in jail as we speak. I don't know if he's still in jail. You never know with the comrades what happens. But he was sentenced and he went to jail. From being the chairman of the ANC in the Northern Cape and so on. So the NPA is not reformed because, for example, the case of Minenhle, who was the chief architect for Zuma in the Nkandla case, was supposed to have been decided in 2021, and it has just disappeared. And 702, Radio 702, went to investigate where is this case, because it was ready to be decided. And nobody in the NPA has been able to account for where is that case. And there are many cases that are still disappearing, comrades cases. So the NPA is not reformed. It so happened for some reason that this case has landed in good hands within the NPA.
Sandile Swanepoel, really appreciate the time. Thank you, the governance expert here on SAFM. Well, lots of developments, of course, around this story at the moment. In fact, we can go now to, I think it's the Littleton police station. There's a group of journalists there waiting to see if Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula is going to arrive there to hand herself over to investigators. SABC political reporter Samkele Maseko, part of the team there. Samkele, good morning to you. What's the situation there at the moment?
A very good morning to you, Stephen, and to the listeners. At this point in time, the Speaker of Parliament, or former Speaker of Parliament rather, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, has arrived here at the Littleton police station. A convoy just pulled up about 5 minutes ago. Earlier on, we did see a convoy of what one may assume is one of the former deputy presidents of the country who pulled up with they pulled up with that particular convoy of the former deputy president of the country, and drove and went to the back of the police station. But we can confirm that the former Speaker of Parliament, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, facing 12 counts of fraud, corruption, money laundering and racketeering charges, is effectively handing herself over to law enforcement agencies this morning. She will then be processed at this specific police station. Then she will then go to the Specialized Commercial Crimes Court in Pretoria, where she will then face those 12 counts of corruption that are brought before her.
Samkele, so then presumably the NPA has said, if I understand correctly, they'll not oppose bail. This should be quite a quick proceeding.
It would be quite a quick proceeding here at the Littleton police station, because effectively the NPA will not be opposing bail. They have been in discussions since the verdict came out at the North Gauteng High Court, where she lost out in that urgent court interdict to try and interdict her imminent arrest, and to have the docket handed over to her legal team and all other information that the NPA may have on her. So effectively, it will be quite a quick process. She will then go home, and a date of the pre-trial discussions will then ensue between her legal team and the National Prosecuting Authority's legal team.
And Samkele, I mean, the momentousness of this, the importance of this. I mean, a former speaker, someone who has to resign because of these allegations, facing charges. This is a big moment.
It is a big moment, Stephen, but it also speaks about how she has, in a way, cushioned the National Assembly and the stature of Parliament, and not wanted to face these specific allegations that she is facing, charges of corruption, money laundering and racketeering, all those 12 counts, still as the Speaker of Parliament. In that resignation letter, saying that she is effectively resigning with immediate effect as a Member of Parliament and as a Speaker of the National Assembly, due to facing of these allegations and not to be distracted, and to respect the stature of the South Africa's system of governance, particularly the legislature, not wanting to drag Parliament and drag the ANC's name in these graft allegations that she is facing, with the ANC's Secretary General's office, the SGO, also accepting her resignation, saying that it is premised around the principles of organizational renewal and also respecting the organs of state.
Samkele Maseko, really appreciate the time. Thank you. Senior political reporter here at the SABC, part of the team outside the Littleton police station. So developments there. Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula has arrived there. We don't quite know exactly what's going on behind the scenes. Obviously, it'll all become clearer, I'm sure, as we go through the day. You'll get more updates on it, of course, going through the day here on SAFM as well. But certainly, as Samkele will tell you, as others have said, a very, very important moment in many different ways. And of course, her resignation, both as Speaker of the National Assembly and as a Member of Parliament, coming through overnight. There'll be more on this through the day, I'm almost certain of it. 26 minutes after 7.
The city of Cairo will be divided into two when Zamalek SC confronts their Modern Future. Zamalek strongly believe they are the kings of the city, but Modern Future want to display something special to conquer the Cairo derby. This is the second leg of the CAF Confederation Cup quarter-final. Catch Zamalek SC versus Modern Future, Sunday 7 April at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Cricket this morning.
Yeah, what a thing for the Proteas ladies, getting a bit tangled in the Sri Lankan spin web. Well, Sri Lanka will go into the next, which is the ODI series, on a high, winning the series deciding 30-20 against the Proteas women. All happened at Buffalo Park in East London, and they won by 4 wickets. This is the first time that Sri Lanka have beaten South Africa in a limited over series. Batting first, the home team scored 155 for 6 before the visitors managed to achieve the highest successful run chase in a T20I at Buffalo Park, finishing on 156 for the loss of 6 wickets. Soccer action last night, both Orlando Pirates, SuperSport United missing crucial opportunities to close the gap with second place Stellenbosch FC as they were held to draws in their respective matches. Pirates clawed back to a 1-1 draw against Morocco Swallows, securing a point after Swallows took the early lead. SuperSport United, despite a 2-goal advantage at half-time, succumbed to 2-2 against a determined Golden Arrows, with Arrows making a second-half fight back. Elsewhere, Chippa United bolstered their survival hopes with a convincing 2-0 win over Cape Town Spurs, while TS Galaxy moved into the top 8 following a 3-0 victory against Royal AM. We go to rugby now, with the Blitzbok rookie Katlego Letebele is ready to shake off the Hong Kong hoodoo in the World 7 Series. With South Africa yet to strike gold at Hong Kong Stadium, Letebele aims to keep contributing on and off the field. The Blitzbok's first challenge will be Ireland. That's on early Friday morning, followed by Spain as they chase the elusive Hong Kong triumph.
Yes, I'm really happy with it. I really didn't expect it at the beginning of the season when I came here. Obviously, it was a whole different game for me. I hadn't played sevens before, but I'm really happy with where I am right now. Building momentum with the team, learning from very experienced players and the coach in the team. So very happy to be in the team, consistent, and just hopefully I just want to contribute the best that I can to the team. I didn't expect to be here in my career so early, traveling the world, playing with some great players that I used to watch on TV. So it's really been a humbling experience.
Golf news, Rory McIlroy has consulted Tiger Woods' former coach Butch Harmon in a bid to address the issues in his game prior to his latest bid to win the Masters. The world number 2 McIlroy will become the 6th player to win all 4 men's majors if he wins next week Masters. But with just one top 20 finish on the PGA Tour this season, the 34-year-old has sought Harmon's help. Harmon worked with Woods for their first 8 major wins before splitting with the then world number 1, and that was in 2002. Olympic news, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova has accused the International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach of discrediting international sport and contradicting the principles of the Olympic movement. Now, Bach was tricked into holding a conversation with Russian pranksters, and that was over the week, and he had established a special panel to monitor media and internet, ensuring that Russian athletes who made political statements in support of their government could not take part in the Olympics. Of course, Bach saying the IOC had also asked Ukraine to provide it with information on Russian athletes and officials. And finally, this news just coming in the football world, mourning following the tragic death of Kaizer Chiefs defender Luke Fleurs. The 24-year-old was fatally shot in a hijacking incident last night. The harrowing incident has left the club and the fans in shock, with the Gauteng police confirming the investigation is ongoing. Fleurs was a promising talent, joined Chiefs as a free agent. The centre-back was yet to earn a game at Chiefs, and we'd like to convey our condolences to the Fleurs family. More sport on Sunrise, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
All right, that news just to hand. All right, very difficult news, of course, there around Luke Fleurs. Well, more on the situation around Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, the former speaker. More as well on protecting children. That in the next half hour. You with SFM leading the conversation. Still no load shedding, 7:30.
Thank you, Stephen. In your headlines, we start with this developing story now. The former National Assembly Speaker, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, has arrived at the Littleton Police Station in Centurion in Pretoria to hand herself in over corruption allegations. She resigned yesterday both as National Assembly Speaker and Member of Parliament. The UDM is among the opposition parties that have welcomed Mapisa-Nqakula's resignation. The party says it has been vindicated as it blew the whistle on her alleged soliciting of millions of rands in bribes from a contractor when she was Defence Minister. And the first man to receive a genetically modified kidney transplant from a pig has been discharged from hospital. 62-year-old Richard Slayman was sent home yesterday, 2 weeks after the groundbreaking surgery at Massachusetts General Hospital in the US. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, good news through the Midrand area. The M1 South, the crash at Samrand Road has been cleared away. The traffic stays busy from John Foster down to New Road, so sort of normalising, but just a little bit busier than what you'd normally expect to find. R21 is queuing into the roadworks at Olifantsfontein and then slowing into the roadworks between Bobsfontein and Benoni again. Just make sure you've got plenty of time to get through that traffic on your way towards the airport. Flooding after some rains in Centurion this morning. John Foster at N Street, the normal place. That routing through has been closed. So just watch for some backlogging in that part of Centurion as peak hour motorists divert to some alternative routes. The N1 going north quite slow this morning from Randburg up towards William Mandela Four Ways. Not as bad as it normally is, but it is slow. A truck jackknifing on the R24 getting onto the N12. So delay as you make your way through the Edenvale exit direction Galulis. Durban coming from Verulam to Palmview. The R102 is extremely backed up this morning. We'll keep an eye on that for you. Truck crash at Prospect and still slowing traffic from Tweeny Hill on your way up the N2 to Durban. The side road, the R102, is fairly heavily backed up as well today. And in Cape Town, no major incidents, but the highways are busy, particularly the M5 from Ottery all the way through to Coburg Interchange. And the M7, Jake Scoville, worth a mention. That's backlogging from 4 Trekker Road right the way through to Bosmansdam Road for a busy turn down to Summer Greens and Montague Gardens area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Our business show host Jimmy Moyaha with you now. Jimmy, good morning. Asian markets, US markets, how are they looking?
Morning, Stephen. Asian markets still in a bit of a mixed bag, but let's start with U.S. markets overnight. Those markets didn't bode so well following some of the announcements made in yesterday by the Fed Chair Jerome Powell and the U.S. Fed's outlook on inflation and interest rates. But nevertheless, S&P up about 0.1% overnight, with the Nasdaq up about 0.25% and the Dow Jones down about 0.1%. Asian markets in current trade, as I said, a bit of a mixed bag. Tokyo up just under 1%, Hong Kong down 1.2%, South Korea up 1.3%, India down about 1/3%, China down about 1/5% or 1/3% if you're looking at their top 50. If we look at the Philippines markets, those are down about 0.5%. Commodities pricing having a really good time at the moment, with gold leading the charge there, just under $2,300 an ounce at the moment. Platinum and palladium are both slightly in the green, with palladium a little higher, about 1/3 in the green. Brent crude $89.61 a barrel, up about 1/3% there. And if we look at some of the currency moves, the rand holding strong against the dollar at 18.67, at 20.25 against the euro, at 23.63 against the British pound. If we look at some of the crypto movements, crypto's still struggling along at the moment. $65,430 on Bitcoin, $3,285 on Ethereum. All cryptos, as I said earlier, are still in the red at the moment. We're looking at some bond yields off the back of the concerns around interest rates at the moment. It looks as though US Treasury bonds are in the green, as are South African 10 and 30-year bonds. So bond markets benefiting slightly from the uncertainty around interest rates, and hopefully we'll see some direction in the near future.
And then that big boardroom showdown at Disney, it ended. Who won?
Bob Iger won. The returning CEO was fending off an interesting conversation from activist investor Nelson Peltz. This would result in Disney incurring some $40 million in costs to fight off this suit. Effectively, the activist investor wanted a change made to some of the board members in the Disney stable, and that didn't go over so well with some other investors, the likes of the founding family that chose to side with the current CEO, Bob Iger, as well, whilst Nelson Peltz had Elon Musk actually in his corner around this vote following the spat that Disney had with X a couple of weeks ago. So $40 million in legal fees and other fees to fight off this activist investor suit, and it came out with Disney coming out on top, Bob Iger coming out on top at the latest AGM.
And Jimmy, Norman Goodfellow's on your show later.
Yes, interestingly enough, they've embarked on an interesting transaction. I'm going to be speaking to them as part of that transaction. It's a very interesting merger that they announced a little while ago, sometime last week. So we're going to speak to them, understand what the partnership looks like and what it means for the market in South Africa. We know they're one of the top privately owned retailers that deal in the alcoholic brands that they deal in, as well as offering the services that they offer alongside that. So they're expanding their services, but also expanding their reach within the South African market. We're going to speak to them a little later on and try and unpack what this latest merger transaction looks like for them.
Jimmy Moyaha, thank you very much indeed. Host of our business show. You'll hear him later here on SAFM. More business news through the day, 23 minutes to 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, lots of reaction coming through, as you can imagine, to the situation around Nosivuma Pisangakula, now the former Speaker in the National Assembly, Bongani and Mpumalanga. How do you see it this morning?
Good morning, SG. Yes, SG. It was a long time coming. I didn't like the way they handled it when the riot took place on 2021 in July. So that was a compromise for the ANC to move her from that ministerial position to the Speaker. But it's safe to say, Stephen, you know what? Sometimes we did some things in our own capacity, because you can see the speculation of the churches. They think that he received some bags and a lot of stuff, and that was not intent to say the ANC sent him to do those kind of things. Yes, Stephen. On that note, please, can I diverge on this one? No, you know what? I'm not a supporter of the ANC, but I'm a supporter of Ramaphosa. You understand?
Yeah.
I'm not a member of the ANC as well. But if I see the SIU when he revamped the SIU, even this organization now, they tend to SIU to report the cases. You can see the SARS where it's performing now. You can see the NPA now. You can see what they are capable to do there. You understand what I'm saying? But safe to say, he has a lot of work to do. But I think he's hitting the right note now to going forward, maybe in the 7th administration, if the ANC is going to win the election. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bongani, on the line from Mpumalanga. Right, I think we hear you. Chris and Peter Maritzburg, hi. Nosivuma Pisangakula.
Yes, I've got one question. Who is paying for the convoy that they've been driving her?
I think that's still the state, yeah.
She can't. It's just embarrassed. When you resign there, you leave even a laptop. So, she has just embarrassed the nation. But the main point that I wanted to call about is the guns. I think we are letting ourselves as a society off the hook very easily, because these guns are carried by criminals who live amongst us.
Yeah.
And to fight guns need a whole society approach. We can't only leave it to the police. Police are just a minute section that depends on us. I think we are letting ourselves off the hook, and we are the ones who are the first to complain again.
All right. No, Chris and Peter Maritzburg, important point. Thank you. Tami in KwaZulu-Natal, hi.
Yes. Good morning, Stevens, and to the listeners. Thanks for taking my call. I'm deeply worried and concerned. Not whether Mapisa Nagula is wrong or not. But I've got a problem. There's something in law which is called the principle of clean hands.
Yeah.
If the somebody has done something wrong, has violated a certain rule, those who want to install justice must keep their hands clean. That's why, therefore, we then said, I think it's very disturbing that as we will be celebrating 30 years, we seem to be turning our back on some of the constitutional principles that we've adopted, legal principles. For instance, presumption of innocence until proven guilty. It's a rebuttable presumption. The people should be treated as if they are innocent. As anybody in South Africa and in the country, you are born with your right, passive
Sure.
right.
But where are you going with this, Tommy? Because I mean, no one is saying now that she is guilty.
Yeah, but people, even your partner, even the people whom we've invited, are talking about people who are corrupt. But there is absence of evidence. You know, for instance, Machalo Koko Stevens was accused by the very same NPA, only to find that they don't have a case.
No, that's not. No, Tommy. That was not the finding. The finding was that the state was not ready, and there is the story from News 24, which I think is an important. Just hold on, Tommy. Tommy, hold on. There is also the story that the magistrate in the case actually had a conflict that they should have declared, and they did not declare a conflict.
No.
Yes.
Stevens. We must not use a common language. In law, there's something called prima facie case.
Yeah.
The police, the NPA, must have a prima facie case, meaning they've collected sufficient evidence in their favor to say you've done something wrong. You can't then, when drag people to court, and then when we are there, you are saying the evidence is not sufficient.
But Tommy, look, that case will be re-enrolled and it will continue.
No. But why it was struck off the roll? Why was the NPA not ready when they've already preferred the judges against the people?
But the magistrate, but the magistrate had a conflict that they should have declared.
And again, Stephen, I'm seeing a resurrection of kangaroo court. You know, the brother of Pius Langa, the former justice.
Yeah.
Chief Justice, the brother of Pius Lang, was killed before 1994.
Yes,
by
I know
ANC
that. Yeah.
Cambridge. Why? Because somebody stood up and said the brother of Pius Baba is in Pimpi, and they acted on that. Later on, it emerged
that he wasn't.
That it was not correct.
I know.
So this is a kangaroo court. So to then treat people as if they've done anything wrong before a court of law says that we are in contempt, we are violating...
No, Tommy, you know, we've been down this road so many times, and I've made this point so many times. If I was accused of doing anything wrong today, I would not be presenting this show tomorrow. And so I think the same must be true for politicians. I would go and clear my name, and then I would come back.
You can explain in your own way. What is your understanding of innocent until proven guilt as a presumption?
Sure, but hold on, Tommy.
Practical level, what does it mean?
It means that if I'm accused of doing something wrong, as is the same for you, you are treated as if you are innocent. But there is also what I would call a higher standard, and let me explain what I mean by that.
No,
Tommy, let me explain. Come on, Tommy, let me explain first.
Which higher standard?
Just
hold. The law must be written in the Constitution. Must be written on the legislation. What is it that you're talking about?
Tommy, it's about legitimacy. Is the point?
No.
Tommy,
I'm going. In law.
You're on your final warning, Tommy. You need to let me speak. Okay? Are we agreed on that?
All right.
Okay. My point is this, that I cannot speak with any authority or legitimacy if I'm facing claims against me. And the same, I think, must be true of a Speaker of the National Assembly. They have to make rulings, and that's the point. And yes, it is difficult, and yes, it would be hard, and I hope that nothing like that ever happens to me. But if it does, you have to behave in a way I would want to protect SAFM. As the National Assembly Speaker has said, by the way, that she wants to uphold the sanctity of Parliament. And I think we can expect people in public life to do that. And I've made this point before a million times, feels like a million times, that no one in a position of trust in a corporate would be allowed to remain in that position if there were claims about their trustworthiness. And I think we're allowed to ask the same of politicians.
Yes, Stephen. Please also give me the chance because...
Sure. Tommy, but you've spoken for a long time, so I'm going to give you a minute and a half and then we need to go.
That is fine. You see, the thinking behind, because what you are not grasping is the thinking behind, the soft part of the rule. You see what you are doing when you say legitimacy. The burden on proof resides with the one who alleges, not the one who's suspected or accused. Now, when you then say, talk about legitimacy and refer to the person who's accused, we are shifting the burden. Then that is the order. We are putting the cart before the horse. We are taking somebody to high school before they go through primary. The order is upside down. You peel one layer, you peel the onion layers one by one. You don't jump to inside. You peel a layer by layer.
Okay.
You go to foundations, you go to primary, you go to high school, you go to university. You don't go to university straight away. So I'm saying the burden of proof is not with the suspect or the accused. The burden of proof resides with the one who alleges.
Yeah. Okay, Tommy, I'm going to leave it there for the moment. There's a lot I could say in response to that, but we've heard your view. We've heard my view. It's 13 minutes to 8.
Aston Villa have found comfort on the top half, and they want maximum points to retain their decent position.
Put it back, and this time, Daniolo is on! The equaliser belongs to Aston Villa!
Yet the Bees want to cause havoc and deprive the Villains by registering an away victory.
Wissart tried one of them in the first half, he's finished it in the second, and Brentford have turned this round.
This is the Premier League. Catch the exciting clash between Aston Villa FC and Brentford FC on Saturday, 6 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, well, views coming through. You heard Tommy's view there. And, of course, there are lots of different ways that this can go. Let's go to Tswane. Tandile. Hi, Tandile.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to the listeners. I just want to respond to Tammy. I think Tammy is a perfect example of what is wrong with our society, the legalism without the ethics, without morality, that he sticks on legal principles without, and blatantly ignoring the moralistic and ethical requirements. The fact that there's an accusation, especially of someone who holds a higher office, was expected to uphold the constitution of the country and to be a moral beacon, means that we should be holding them to a higher standard. To stick to legalistic and be petty about legal arguments will not going to help us. So Tammy, I think, does a disservice. This is a perfect example of what's wrong with the society that we live in that we tend to hide behind legalism to evade accountability. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Tandile, thank you for that on the line from Tswane. Well, I mean, in the end, it's up to everyone, and everyone's going to have their own view. Siyabonga in KwaZulu-Natal. Hi.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to your listeners. It's one of those difficult days that you always have to. Now, I was hoping that I could apply for a job, but I'm going to share my CV. But Steve,
I love it though, Siyabonga. I love it. Anyway, go on.
I think, Steve, the people can't be complaining about this matter being now in a kangaroo court. It's a speaker who took this matter to court.
That's
trying to interdict
an important point, yeah.
That's why we became to know about it. Then it was all over. But, Stephen, the other thing that once you assume public office, then as well you must accept public scrutiny. Because you now you're no longer an ordinary man on the street. So that I guess it comes with the territory. But we're not saying that the speaker is guilty, but he's facing very serious charges, which must concern us as the public, and then we must reflect on it. But moving forward, Steve, on the issue of the analysis by Sandile, I tend to agree with the speaker who was pointing on the what one may refer as the green shoots of this sixth administration. And Sandile, I don't think for lately, I don't think he's been objective enough. As an academic, I think he can do better. I'm not attacking him, his persona. I think sometimes his personal feelings then overshadow what one would expect from an academic. He should be analysis backed by theory or whatever that he'll be analyzing. So that's my parting shot, Steve.
No, it's a fair point. Siyabonga, thank you. On the line from KwaZulu-Natal. Everyone will disagree, of course. Lots of arguments around that. 9 minutes to 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, a bit of rain in Gauteng this morning's left immediately to flooding in and around Centurion. John Foster Drive, the main route there, closed to the Henops. That's where N Street comes into it, so you won't be able to get straight through John Foster. There will be some delays just sort of looping around onto alternative routes. R21 queuing up down to Clayville on your way to the airport. There's more roadworks after that as you head down towards the Benoni exit. So as we say, just make sure you've got plenty of time to get through, particularly if you've got that flight to connect with. The N12 coming away from Davyton, a crash near Pitfontein Road. All lanes are open, but there is a backlog of traffic in that area. Durban, the N2 north up towards Prospector after an earlier truck crash is starting to move through. A lot of that traffic has been released to hit the roadworks just north of Spaghetti Junction. So from the M7 Bluff exit is bad. Breakdown this morning on the N3 near Pavilion. So coming out of Pinetown, the M13 and the N3 through Paradise Valley on your way towards the shopping mall, quite heavily backed up. And it looks like something's happened on the N2 south before Spaghetti Junction. There's quite a queue coming down from Umgeni roadside as well. So really busy in that part of Durban. Cape Town, the Okavango Bridge in the Brackenfell area is quite heavy. That in turn is causing a wait to get out on the N1. The N1 outbound from the R300 towards Okavango Road very slow. At the N7, Goodwood through to Bosmansdam Road remains heavily backed up, and some pressure on Jan Smuts Drive coming out of Athlone. That's a route that's getting busier by the day as you queue through the Klipfontein Road junction. In fact, both ways on Jan Smuts very busy. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Rewind the years and relive all the action on the A-Team. Don Hannibal Smith leads the team of 4 members of a former commando outfit. His plans may be unorthodox, but they're effective. Lieutenant Templeton Pegg, second in command, a smooth-talking conman, and the appropriator of vehicles and other useful items. The team pilot, Captain Howling Mad Murdoch. Howling Mad. His name says it all. Sergeant First Class Mr. T, the team's strongman and mechanic. Join them as they embark on epic adventures and missions, all in attempts to clear their names, weekdays at 12. Channel your inner A-game with the A-Team, only on S3.
The city of Cairo will be divided into 2 when Zamalek SC confronts their Modern Future. Zamalek strongly believe they are the kings of the city, but Modern Future want to display something special to conquer the Cairo derby. This is the second leg of the CAF Confederation Cup quarterfinal. Catch Zamalek SC versus Modern Future, Sunday 7 April at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
6 minutes to 8, the time. You know the number 086 000 2032. Well, we've been talking a bit about violent crime this morning, and one of the things we've seen is how unsafe it is to be a child in South Africa. We were speaking about hunger earlier in the week. I was horrified to hear that, still up to almost 29% of our children are not getting enough food and growing up stunted. Toko Mkwanazi Kaluva is the chair of the National Children and Violence Trust. Ma'am, good morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Morning. Thanks for having us this morning.
I know I've kept you on hold for a long time, so I do apologize for that. We know that our society is still so unsafe for children. I think in 1994 there was a moment of optimism that our society would become safer. We would be able to better protect our children, and we would sort of bring up better adults as a result. I don't know if I'm using the right phrase here. Why have we appeared to fail so comprehensively?
think we have failed dismally when it comes to our children. Of course, there are massive changes if you look at where we were in 1994. But in terms of safety, because our children depend on us to keep them safe. They are unlike, adults who can walk into a police station and report. They depend on us to speak on their behalf. And when we fail to do that, their lives are at risk perpetually, even at home, in the neighborhood, in their communities, at school. You find that it's never safe. Even within religious settings, you find that certain children were sexually violated in churches. So where are our children supposed to be safe? Nowhere, until us as adults and government will take the responsibility to protect our children.
It's obviously, and everyone will say everyone in society has a duty to do this, and of course that's true. But so many things happen, children get caught up in violence, they witness violence. There have been the most horrendous cases of children falling down manholes and things like that. Is there a way, is there any kind of strategy we can use to make our society safe? And reducing the levels of violence would probably be the first thing, although perhaps it might be more important, depending, to make sure that children have enough food as a starting point.
Well, the basics need to be there. A simple thing like transport to school or have a school near your home. A lot happens in between as you walk to school. And, those transports that the kids use, which are unsafe, it's a basic necessity. And secondly, for our teachers and caregivers of children to be more observant and to be able to see if there's a change in a child's behavior and to act accordingly. Our responsibility will remain our responsibility as parents, as relatives, as neighbors, to be vigilant, to observe if there's something very wrong. If you hear a child crying next door consistently, what do? Do you keep quiet and say it's none of my business? Or do you find out why this child is crying every day? Probably being beaten up to a pulp, and you just, you don't care. So we need to care. We need to be vigilant. We need to protect children, even if they are not our own.
It can be difficult to do that, If you intervene in a home, you go into someone's house and say, what's happening here? It's a very difficult thing, And if you say to an adult, I don't like the way you're parenting your child, man, oh man, there's going to be a fight now.
It's really not about that. You see, the cry of a child who's just crying. The scream of a child who's being tortured. We all know the difference. So you need to go to the police station and say, there's something happening in my neighbor's house. I'm not sure what it is. You also don't want to go and knock because, you might find that to get caught up in the violence. But allow the system, allow the social workers to go and investigate where there are social workers. We need to make sure that the system works, that the services are there for children, but that we speak out. We need to be vigilant. Let's not start saying it's none of my business. Why are the others quiet? I'll also keep quiet.
Dr. Mkhwanazi Gqaluva, Chair of the National Children Violence Trust. Thanks very much indeed. Well, we'll continue the conversations around Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, the former Speaker of the National Assembly, after 8 o'clock. Developments there, of course. Also, get an update from PRASA, the situation regarding their railways. And then don't forget, from 8:30, your mediated conversation around our changing sporting calendar. There was a time you could almost sort of set your clock or your calendar by when this tournament would kick off and when the first ball of that tournament would be bowled, but it's all changing now. And you look at the arguments around the Currie Cup and rugby, for example, that's becoming quite difficult. We'll look at that. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 8 o'clock.
Thank you, Stephen. In your top stories, former NA speaker at the police station to hand herself over to authorities, and IEC to administer pledge on political parties to uphold free and fair elections. This is SAFM News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. The former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula's convoy has arrived at the Littleton police station in Centurion, Pretoria, where she will hand herself over to the law enforcement authorities. She resigned yesterday, both as National Assembly Speaker and Member of Parliament. Mapisa-Nqakula said in a resignation letter that her decision was not an admission of guilt regarding the corruption allegations against her. The High Court in Pretoria recently struck off the roll her urgent application to interdict police from arresting her. Last month, the NPA raided her home in Johannesburg. Our senior political reporter, Samkelo Maseko, is outside the police station.
We can confirm that the former Speaker of Parliament, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, facing 12 counts of fraud, corruption, money laundering and racketeering charges, is effectively handing herself over to law enforcement agencies this morning. She will then be processed at this specific police station. She will then go to the Specialized Commercial Crimes Court in Pretoria, where she will then face those 12 counts of corruption that are brought before her. The NPA will not be opposing bail. It will be quite a quick process. She will then go home, and a date of the pre-trial discussions will then ensue between her legal team and the National Prosecuting Authority's legal team.
The UDM is among the opposition parties that have welcomed Mapisa-Nqakula's resignation. The party says it has been vindicated as it blew the whistle on her alleged soliciting of millions of rands in bribes from a contractor when she was defense minister. The UDM chief whip, Nqabayomzi Kwankwa, says there are consequences in undermining the credibility of parliament.
If she is found to be guilty of any wrongdoing at the end of the process, the law must take its course, and she must face the full might of the law. Those who are now left behind in the interim leadership of Parliament have the responsibility to ensure that Parliament as an institution continues to discharge its constitutional mandate.
In some election-related news, now political parties contesting the elections on the 29th of next month are today expected to sign the Electoral Code of Conduct. The Electoral Commission has organized the signing ceremony, which will take place at the Gallagher Estate in Midrand here in Johannesburg. Zara Grunewald reports.
Parties are expected to vow against political violence directed at other parties and the Electoral Commission, as well as members of the public and the media. Political parties are further anticipated to recognize the authority of the Electoral Commission and accept the outcome of the result. If dissatisfied with the election's outcomes, political parties have the right to challenge the results in court. The signing of the IEC's Electoral Code of Conduct comes amid growing threats of violence concerning an unfavorable result by the newly formed Umkhonto weSizwe Party, led by former President Jacob Zuma. I am Zara Grunewald in Johannesburg.
The humanitarian aid organization Gift of the Givers says they will continue to provide disaster relief to victims of fire across Cape Town. The organization's teams and the Anglican Archbishop of Cape Town, Thabo Makgoba, visited Mfuleni yesterday. About 800 people were displaced across the metro over the Easter weekend after fire destroyed their homes. Gift of the Givers spokesperson Ali Sabley says the Anglican Church has bought stationery which will be distributed to learners.
There's still total devastation here, total depression, and we hope in the next coming few days there can be some closure for these families in terms of building materials, some housing issues. The Archbishop has raised the issue of water and sanitation, most importantly the ID documents. Some of them have informed us they cannot access their grants because they do not have the necessary documents in place. But from our side, we have given a commitment to all three fire sites. We will be there for the next few days to look after the humanitarian needs.
The Solplaatje municipality in Kimberley in the Northern Cape says it's ready for the planned water shutdown that is set to start tonight and end on Monday next week. The municipality says the shutdown is necessary to fix major leaks due to damaged pipe. Residents have been urged to store water despite the municipality dispatching water tanks to their areas. The municipality's executive mayor is Kagiso Sonyoni.
Repairs are to be effected on 4 major leaks on the bulk pipeline from Riverton to Kimberley that have been the source of excessive water losses and threatening to collapse our water supply. We will be enforcing emergency basic water supply by placing JoJo tanks in most of the wards and accessible spots. Special supply provision has been made for hospitals, old age homes, and other critical centers.
And finally, the first man to receive a genetically modified kidney transplant from a pig has been discharged from hospital. 62-year-old Richard Slayman was sent home yesterday, 2 weeks after the groundbreaking surgery at Massachusetts General Hospital in the U.S. Organ transplants from genetically modified pigs have failed in the past, but the success of this procedure so far has been hailed by scientists as an historic milestone in the field of transplantation. Recapping your top story, the former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula has arrived at the Littleton Police Station in Centurion, where she will hand herself over to law enforcement agencies. For SAFM News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 8:30.
Good morning. Here are your SFM Sunrise Sports headlines. In a somber update from the football world, we mourn the loss of Kaizer Chiefs defender Luke Fleurs, taken tragically in a hijacking incident. Meanwhile, on the rugby pitch, Siya Kolisi concedes his Springboks captaincy following his move overseas. We'll unpack these stories and more just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A reminder about a closure at John Foster Drive, 3 Centurion this morning up at N Street. That's the Henops River that's in flood after some rain earlier this morning. Doesn't take much these days in terms of rain to flood that Henops, and that section of John Foster being closed. We'll have you just diverting around that, although traffic does seem to be easing in that area. The N1 between Bruckfontein and New Road stays busy. The R21 slow go as you approach the roadworks at Clayville. Just a reminder, yesterday it took motorists about 2 hours in some cases to get through from Clayville to the second set of roadworks down by the Benoni exit. The traffic was absolutely insane during yesterday's drive time. So if you've got those flights to connect with, we do remind you again, check first on traffic conditions and give yourself plenty of time to get through it. Truck crash on the N12 with the R24 merge. Both of those routes heading through to Gluleys remain slow. Durban, the N2 going northbound, easing up out of Toti 3 Prospector. The earlier truck crash has been cleared. There is a breakdown around Pavilion Mall, so there's some very heavy traffic coming through from Pinetown this morning. M13, M3 routes through Paradise Valley, and then if you're going the other way out of Durban, there's quite a backlog into Paradise Valley as well. Cape Town, the standout queue this morning, the N7 North, Jake Skebel under pressure from as far back as Viking Way in Epping, right the way through to Bosman's Dam Road up in the Edgemead Summer Greens area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 after 8, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Good to have you along with us this morning. Still reaction to the developments around Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. Also, Tami's call around, when people have to resign and when they don't. This has been one of the dynamics, one of the sort of tensions, if you like, running through the conversations that we've been having here on SAFM Sunrise about when you must go, when you mustn't. We'll talk about the changing timing of sporting schedules. It's one of those things that really matters, It used to just be sort of seasonal. Now it's all very different. So we'll talk about that from 8:30. Also, I didn't know this. There's a link between your genes, not those genes, your genetic makeup, and whether you will get tuberculosis. I was amazed to read that. We'll find out more about that from in the next 10 minutes or so as well. Good morning. It's 9 after 8.
Unforgettable happens when the young and the old know they can surf, snorkel, fish, enjoy whale watching, and end the day with sundowners neshisa nyama. KwaZulu-Natal is a jewel waiting to happen. Ziyakhipha with hiking, horse riding, biking, ziplining, and mountain biking adventures waiting for the fearless and the bold. Unforgettable happens here. Zwagala. Brought to you by Tourism KwaZulu-Natal. Aston Villa have found comfort on the top half, and they want maximum points to retain their decent position.
Put it back, and this time, Maniolo is on! The equaliser belongs to Aston Villa!
Yet the Bees want to cause havoc and deprive the Villains by registering an away victory.
Wissart tried one of them in the first half, he's finished it in the second, and Brentford have turned this round.
This is the Premier League. Catch the exciting clash between Aston Villa FC and Brentford FC on Saturday, 6 April at 3 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
10 after 8, you know the number 086 000 2032. The passenger rail agency PRASA talking about the fact that 5 of their lines, their metro rail services, are now operating again. Cape Town to Stellenbosch, Merebank to Chatsglen, Joburg to Florida, Joburg to Mansfield, and Germiston to Elsburg. Those are now running again. And you know, of course, the damage that was done during the lockdown and before to PRASA and to their railway lines. The spokesperson for the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa is Andiswa Makanda. Andiswa, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to your listeners.
Okay, so 31 of your 40 lines are now back, some of them running partially, of course. When you bring them back online, I'm sure you find there's a huge demand for them.
Definitely, Stephen. There is a huge demand for the services. We're seeing also with the lines where we've operated during peak hours, the trains are full to capacity. People are coming back. They're using the trains, and there is a demand. And so that's why we're working hard to ensure that we recover all these services, but also to reinstall the frequency of the services. That's what we're working on, is to increase the frequency of our services and to also improve the headways so that trains are moving at every 15 minutes, which is why the resignaling project that is currently underway is quite important and a priority.
I mean, the better the signalling, the more trains you can run on the same set of tracks.
That's definitely the point, Stephen, is that we need to run trains safely and increase their frequency. So that's why this resignaling project is quite a priority for PRASA.
Do you find when you set up a line and you get it... Bless me, and so sorry about that.
No.
Do you find when you get a railway line running again, you have fewer instances of sabotage or vandalism or theft on it? In other words, one of the things and one of the lessons of the lockdown is that if you leave lines unattended and unused, they'll be damaged, people will take bits of them, etc. We all know how the economy around metal works. When you get them running again, is it actually easier to keep those lines safe from vandalism?
Definitely, Stephen. That's a good point. We found that is the biggest deterrent when you are running more services. That serves as a deterrent against theft and vandalism of the rail infrastructure. And you remember what had happened was during lockdown when we were not running services. That's when criminals took advantage of not running trains, and so the theft and vandalism happened and escalated during lockdown. And so we've observed that when we're running trains services, it does serve as a deterrent. Wherever the stations are quite busy, criminals do not find the opportunity to vandalize the rail infrastructure.
There's obviously a lot more work to do. Do you have the resources and the money to do what you need to do to get the rest of the lines running and the lines that are running partially to get them fully restored?
Definitely, Stephen. That's the work that's happening currently, is to look at what are the priorities given the budget that has been allocated to PRASA. You know, with the announcement that was made by the finance minister, we have to work within the budget that has been allocated, looking at what can be feasible to operate and what are the capital projects that we could put in place within the budget that has been allocated to us. And so that's the work that the team is currently doing, is to look at what are the priorities given the budget that has been allocated to us.
Andiswa Makanda, thanks very much indeed. Spokesperson for the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa. Really appreciate the time. 14 minutes after 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Thomas on the line from Newcastle. Thomas, hi, good morning. Nosavuma, peace and Kakula. How do you see it, Thomas?
No, Steve. I actually was not even going to call until I heard Tulani, incidentally from Newcastle, you know.
Yeah.
And he was speaking as though we have taken Mapisa Ngagula to court, and she, without even being given a chance to answer, and we gave her a sentence, you know. Whilst the process is, as much as you are innocent until proven, there still is a process. You still must be taken in. You still must be arraigned, as the Americans will say. I don't know exactly what we say in South Africa. You still have to abide by those, and you are not exempted from them.
Even what you call the former premier of the Free State, he went through that when he had to go to court. Well, he arranged however he arranged, but that's what we do. So if he comes and he says it's a unfair justice and all that, and he's misquoting everything to just muddy the water. And it's about time in South Africa that we get to a place, Steve, I believe, where we know what the rules of engagement are, and we teach people that don't know, and those that purport to know. We train people and we don't speak the untruth just to cover who we are supporting.
I see what you mean. In other words, you've got to sort of be consistent in a way.
Exactly. And even if let's say I like Mapisa Ngagula, but if I want to speak about it, where it's at right now, let me speak truthfully. Let me not speak to cause a kind of a kerfuffle, where people are not know, and then they're quoting me as though I was telling the truth. Because I think Tulane knows somewhat, and he's using the gentleman that called after him. He said he's not following ethics.
Yeah.
He's not being ethical. He's using the law, but even there, he's bending it.
Yeah.
And very much so, to the point of breaking it. He shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, I think it was Tommy, not Tulani, but I hear you, Thomas. Thomas.
Yes, it was Tommy. Thank you very much.
Not at all, Thomas. Thomas, thank you. I'm putting my glasses back on. I appreciate it. Thomas on the line from Newcastle. I mean, it's very interesting to hear these views on these things. Denzel on the line from Kimberley. Hi, you want to talk about our institutions?
Yes, Stephen, good morning. Stephen, I'm going to make an example of one show, your show, SAFM Sunrise. Sunrise is a quality show. Why? There's qualified personnel who are competent, credible, and who are committed. Now I'm going to go to SARS. SARS has collected 10 billion more, if I'm correct, Stephen.
Yeah.
Why? Because Mr. Keith's Vector is there, and he has capable people underneath him who knows when, who are qualified, who belong in each and every department that knows their job. Now, Stephen, my next point is, there's I don't know if you know the story of Ford about the Vice Chancellor.
Yeah.
Now, the same thing, but just on the opposite side. When he attempted to clean up the system, clean it out, there was a lot of backlash. People got murdered, Stephen.
Yeah.
Why? Because the whole system, he wanted to rejuvenate his whole system. Now, that is the problem we have at the NPA and at our institutions. The person that I'm going to vote for, Stephen, I think Urban Mashaba will be the right person because for me, maybe not for you, but I believe Urban Mashaba will be the right person if he can get his personnel, choose the right people underneath him who can do the job. So, thank you, Stephen. Enjoy your day.
Denzel on the line from Kimberley, thank you. All right, yeah, interesting. An interesting view there. And, of course, I know that people are going to say who they're voting for. That's fine. I'm not going to stop you from doing that. Fred on the line from Polokwane, hi.
Stephen.
Yeah.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, Fred. Go for it.
Let me talk about this case of Mapisa, the speaker. Stephen, it is proven day by day to say we are not equal and we are not even striving to be equal. Crime is a crime. The manner in which this case is handled, it's a way to show off the entirety of this country, if not the world, to say we are not equal and we are not striving to be equal. If the case was made by me or you either, let me rest assure you, they are not going to even talk about the investigation and so forth. I were to be detained, and after being detained, they will then be able to proceed with their investigation. There are a lot of people who have been arrested illegally, and thereafter, they start to issue some sort of litigations against the state. But the truth of the matter is, why are they not doing it with this one? We need to strive for equality. And for the fact that the same people who teaches us as comrades to say we're striving for equality or whatever the circumstance that lead people to be equal are the ones who are promoting that not to happen.
Yeah.
So it's very wrong for us to sit and say no, the treatment will be good. The treatment already is not good. Remember the first stature that she basically started with, or the first move that she basically started with, was there to challenge the fact that she must not be arrested.
Yeah.
Why couldn't she just wait for her to be arrested and then prove her case in court? And thereafter, if things were not of material in nature, which were not factual, she will then be able to defame others, whereby she will stay through the state.
Sure. No.
Let we not be put in this arena of people or comrades lying to us continuously with no reasons to say we are equal, while they know very well that equality is not what they are striving for.
All right, Fred on the line from Polokwane. It's an interesting point, and I did think when Tommy was talking that there might be a reaction. 21 after 8.
For over 40 years, people around the world have been spinning and winning thanks to the Wheel of Fortune. Now it's your turn to take the prize as this legendary game show finally launches in South Africa weekdays 7:30 p.m. on S3, plus an omnibus Saturdays at 10:30 a.m. with rebroadcast on SABC2 9:30 a.m. Don't miss your chance to be part of history. Enter now on www.wheeloffortunesa.tv and let the wheel decide your fate. Channel your inner wordsmith on Wheel of Fortune on S3. Open up.
The city of Cairo will be divided into two when Zamalek SC confronts their Modern Future. Zamalek strongly believe they are the kings of the city, but Modern Future want to display something special to conquer the Cairo derby. This is the second leg of the CAF Confederation Cup quarterfinal. Catch Zamalek SC versus Modern Future, Sunday 7 April at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Well, more details and more information coming through, more research being done, I should say, about the causes of tuberculosis and how some people are more susceptible, more likely to contract tuberculosis than others. And I was amazed to hear this, that it seems that your genes play quite a big role in this. Professor Marlo Muller is a professor in the Division of Molecular Biology and Human Genetics at the University of Stellenbosch. Professor Muller, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning. Thank you. It's nice to speak to you again.
What role do genes play in getting tuberculosis? I thought that if there was a disease going around, we all had the same chance of getting it.
No. So actually our genes do play a role. So we've done many studies to find out how our genes affect our chances of getting TB. And we are thinking that we know that the immune system is influenced by the host genetic component. So before, when we just looked at one small group of people, we could not apply our findings to other groups, or we found nothing. But now we were able to combine a whole lot of different studies in a meta-analysis, and this has improved our chances of finding meaningful results.
Can you actually isolate the genes? I mean, what is it about the genes that make you more susceptible or less susceptible?
I wish we could just isolate only one gene, but unfortunately, because TB has been around with humans for so long, many genes contribute. So it's a complex system, and these genes all interact in different ways. So it's not like a monogenic disorder where you can identify one gene and one gene mutation and say this is contributing. Instead, it's many genes and many genetic variants all working together, and this affects your chances.
So we know, for example, with COVID-19, that if you had diabetes, which is genetic, which has a genetic link, if you're a diabetic, you had a higher chance of being susceptible to COVID-19 and passing on as a result, or severe symptoms. Are there things that can tell us that you might have the genes that make you more susceptible to tuberculosis?
Oh, yes, definitely. So, in fact, type 2 diabetes is another reason why some people might be more susceptible to TB, and there's been a link found between that. And we have a study ongoing. But then also, if you have any other disease that compromises your immune system, so for example, if you are HIV positive, you are also more likely to get TB.
Do these genes move through certain groups of people? What I'm trying to get to is, are certain groups of people more likely to get it?
I wouldn't say that. So it is all about exposure, right? And if you're in the wrong environment, for example, if you're constantly exposed to Mycobacterium tuberculosis, there will be a threshold at some stage when everyone gets infected. But by the time you're infected, it doesn't mean that you will go on to develop the disease. So we are trying to figure out which people will go on to develop disease. And I wouldn't say it's a specific group of people, no.
Okay. Does it affect the way we treat people with tuberculosis?
We hope to have that in the future because it would be very nice if we could identify those that are infected and likely to go on to develop disease. So if we could figure out that, we have a very effective prophylactic treatment for TB with INH, isoniazid is the medication. And we could then give this to people to prevent them from getting TB. So in fact, when people are HIV positive, we already treat them with isoniazid to prevent them from getting TB.
And then there are different types of tuberculosis, right? And there's I think there's a thing called sort of normal TB. You get drug-resistant, multi-drug resistant, extreme drug-resistant, etc. And there are different strains. Does your genetic susceptibility possibly affect which strain you get? What I'm trying to get to is if you are more susceptible genetically, could you get a worse strain of TB, or does it not work like that at all?
Well, there is a hypothesis that this could be the case. So because Mycobacterium tuberculosis, the causative bacterium, and humans have evolved together for so long, we can think that there has been some selection between the two groups. So we do see certain strains of TB circulating more in specific parts of the world. Of course, now with travel, that's more common. We spread them around the world, as we've seen with COVID. So it's not so clear-cut as it used to be in the past. But there is definitely something happening there.
Professor Muller, you've made the point that this disease has been with us for a very long time. It's amazing that we're still finding new ways and new things about it, even though it's been part of humanity for so much of our history.
Yes, and I think, I'm a molecular scientist, so I shouldn't be commenting on social aspects, but I think it shows that there's maybe not the political will to really deal with TB in the way we should. We saw how the world came together and dealt with COVID, how fast we got a vaccine, and this has certainly not been the case for TB. For TB, we only have one vaccine called BCG, and that's only really effective in children. So, yes, I think we need more funding, more political will to deal with this disease.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the time. An important point. Professor Marlo Muller is in the Division of Molecular Biology and Human Genetics at the University of Stellenbosch. 27 after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, this is terrible news about Luke Fleurs, a huge shock.
Oh, heartbreaking, Stephen. I think our thoughts are with Luke Fleurs, his family, as well as his teammates. This was a tragic story for South African football. Kaizer Chiefs' Luke Fleurs tragically passing away. The promising young defender's life was cut short due to an act of violence taken from the world during a hijacking incident. The loss has been deeply felt across the football community, tributes pouring in from fans, teammates and rivals alike. Fleurs, known for his passion on the field and kindness off it, leaves behind a legacy not just as a player, but as an individual who made a lasting impact on all who knew him. More soccer now. In an enlightening conversation, Liverpool's manager Jurgen Klopp expressed optimism for Alexis McAllister, the midfield maestro Liverpool acquired from Brighton. Klopp, having desperately wanted McAllister, highlights the player's successful adaptation to a more advanced midfield role, crucial for Liverpool's recent victories, including a masterful performance that sealed a 2-1 win against Brighton. Klopp praised McAllister's integration and leadership, especially as they look ahead to their match with Sheffield United tonight.
Oh, I had no limits for him. It's what I didn't want to limit him. It's just I knew that this is a player I desperately want. Thank God we got him. And then from that moment on, you can always in a new environment, because everything he learned at Brighton was super useful.
Moving to Siya Kolisi in rugby, accepting the inevitable loss of his Springboks captaincy. This comes in the wake of his move to Racing 92, sparking widespread debate on the policy requiring national team leadership to play domestically. Kolisi, a towering figure in rugby and a two-time Rugby World Cup winning captain, has shown grace in the face of this significant change, highlighting the ongoing conversation about the balance between international club commitments and national team duties. Now, currently Currently, the Sharks trio of Lucanio Am, Bongio Bonambi and Ibn Etzebet are the favourites to take over from Kolisi as the Springboks captain. Steven Kitchoff's name could also be thrown into the mix, as reports claim he'll be leaving Ulster after one season and was likely return to the Stormers. And finally, F1, Matteo Binotto, the team principal of Scuderia Ferrari, has expressed optimism about the team's performance this season.
I think the track is the favorite one of all the drivers almost, because it's a very exciting one. Last year we didn't perform very well, but I think we did also a step forward on this kind of corner, very high-speed corner. We are in a much better shape compared to 1 year ago. And if you have a look on the first 3 events, it was very, very tight, that we are speaking about 1 or 2 tenths of seconds per lap. It means that everything is open.
More sport on, SAFM around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. All right, our changing sporting tournaments and what that tells us about the business of sport. That's next. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 8:30.
Thank you, Stephen. In your headlines, the former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula is at the Littleton police station in Centurion, where she handed herself over to authorities this morning. This comes amid corruption allegations against her when she was Defence Minister. Political parties contesting elections on the 29th of next month are today expected to sign the Electoral Code of Conduct. The Electoral Commission has organised the signing ceremony, which will take place at the Gallagher Estate in Midrand here in Johannesburg. And the humanitarian aid organisation Gift of the Givers says they will continue to provide disaster relief to victims of fire across Cape Town. About 800 people were displaced across the metro over the Easter weekend after fire destroyed their homes. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Just into Durban, an update on the closure of the N3. It has recently, in the last few minutes, been reopened. The road was closed to Durban between Paradise Valley and Pavilion due to some fallen power cables, but that has been reopened. There's a big backlog coming through Pinetown on both the N3 and on the M13, approaching that glide on to the N3. So it was all closed down and heavily restricted. So road open, but big backlogs Durban bound through Pinetown, and a fairly heavy queue going from Pavilion out towards the Paradise Valley interchange as well. All open, but very heavy backlogs. Just staying in the region, a crash on the N2 South at Spaghetti Junction, heavy coming through from Inanda Road, and the breakdown in the roadworks between Kwamashu and Gateway. If you're on your way to the airport, that's a heavy queue. And if you're leaving Pietermaritzburg, a breakdown at Ashburton this morning, pushing traffic halfway back towards Market Road and looking about as heavy as that route can be sometimes with the breakdowns in the roadworks. Midrand section, Brockfontein down to Olifantsfontein remains slow. A jackknife truck or a truck that's crashed on the R24 at the N12 merge. It's off the road, but there's only one lane open, so the R24 arriving from the airport en route to Galulis is a heavy mess. Cape Town, the N1 inbound from Plattercliff Hill all the way through to the elevated freeway, and the CBD's heavy. The N7 worth a mention, heavy between Goodwood and Bosmansdown this morning, a lot worse than normal. And there's been a crash on the N2 inbound at Lisbeck Parkway. Traffic's heavy on your way into town from as far back as Langa, and behind that the M5 North queuing up from Kenilworth just to try and get off and into that N2 queue. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
27 minutes now to 9. The time for your mediated conversation this Thursday morning. So over the last few years, there have been quite big changes to how sport is managed and how its calendars have changed. There was a time you could almost rely on the starting date for certain tournaments. You knew when a rugby tournament would start. You knew Test cricket was the only type of cricket that mattered. Now it's all changing. I mean, earlier this year, we saw our top male cricketers being told they had to prioritise the SA20 cricket tournament between our franchises above Test cricket. As a result, we sent a team of players who were not selected for the SA20 to represent our national team in a Test series in New Zealand. There's also now a huge debate happening in rugby about the future of the Currie Cup competition because of the relatively new tournament our teams are playing in the URC. There's simply no time for the Currie Cup unless players play all year with no break at all. Football isn't immune from this, by the way. Mamelodi Sundowns might be playing in the FIFA Club World Cup next year. If they qualify, they could win around R1 billion just for qualifying. And I haven't even mentioned what's happening in Formula One. and how it's now happening in places it's never happened in before. So then, how is the sports calendar changing? Does this mean there's more money in sport? First, the SABC sportscaster Thando Mkoli will ask about what is changing and what isn't. Then Craig Ray, the sports editor at Daily Maverick, particularly about the situation involving cricket and rugby. And finally, Kelvin Watt is the managing director for Africa, Asia Pacific and the Middle East at Nielsen Sports. We start then with the SABC sportscaster Thando Mkoli. Thando Mkoli, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
Have you noticed big changes in how our sports tournaments are moving? I mean, it seems that there are big changes to the calendar in most of the major sports.
From a fan's perspective, it's beautiful because every weekend there's something to watch. But from a professional point of view, if you're a sports person and if you work in sport, it does get tiring because there is no real break. You're literally moving from one tournament to another, and fatigue is a real thing. So I understand why, purely because the lifeblood of any professional setup is money, and money pays for the best ground staff, money pays for the best marketers, money pays for the players. So all the key stakeholders in any game basically depend on money to survive. That's what attracts them to certain tournaments. So the more money you have, the better your chances are of attracting top players. As we've seen in the Saudi League, for example, money has brought the likes of Ronaldo to a very lucrative league. So again, it's a two-edged sword whereby for fans, you literally don't have a shortage of entertainment, but for those who are actually involved in the sport, it is really, really taxing.
Is football as affected by this as the other sports? I mean, in a way, football perhaps had a global season before anyone else. Sundowns now find themselves in so many different competitions. That's because they've been so successful. But is football changing too, or not as much as the others?
Oh, no, it definitely is changing. For example, we saw the failed attempt of a Super League in Europe. That has happened in Africa, for example. So the money is dictating where everything goes. And ultimately, footballers, just like any professional, they're trying to get rewarded for their efforts. So footballers, whether it's Africa, Asia, wherever, we had a situation in England, for example, whereby you had all the Asian players going to the Asian Cup and then all the African players coming to the African Cup of Nations while the league was on. So for a good 5 weeks or so, players for Liverpool, Tottenham Hotspurs, Chelsea, they lost key players because of those tournaments, and it simply is the global nature of sport and also the professional nature of sport. We need the money to keep the sport, to sustain the sport. So again, it goes back to how do you make sure that everything is as everyone is well rewarded and also the standards are really maintained at the highest possible level.
How much of this is because the sort of growing internationalization of sport? Now, there have always been, international tournaments between countries, and in Europe for a long time, and in many other places, actually, there's been international competitions between clubs. It does seem to me that maybe it's a sort of growing internationalization. It almost doesn't matter where you're born. If you're very, very good at a sport like football, cricket, rugby, you're going to be playing almost in the same markets, It almost doesn't matter where you're born anymore.
Definitely, it is like that. But also, if you look at the difference, for example, let's go to the Africa Cup of Nations. If you look at the past tournaments, if you look at the quality, firstly, of the playing fields and of the actual tournaments, when Dr. Patrice Motsepe went to CAF and he said, we're going to unbundle the TV rights, that draws more money to CAF. You saw the quality of the pitches in Ivory Coast were almost world-class standard. The tournament in general became a better tournament when more money was involved. Again, like you said, the best players will always go to where they'll always gravitate to where the money is, whether it's China, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's Europe, whether it's America. And that's purely a demand factor. Where there's a demand for the best talent, the talent will be rewarded. I don't know how, if it's a fair reward, because some of those salaries are ridiculous, But the best talent will always be rewarded for the quality that they bring to any setup. So again, it's an unfortunate thing for the people who are playing, but they're also handsomely rewarded for their efforts.
It must mean, though, that more people are playing more sport more often. And I wonder sometimes if, it may just all get a little bit boring. Not just for the players, they get jaded, but for the audiences too.
It can never get boring purely because the best will ultimately compete with the best, and that will always be an interesting perspective for anyone, whether you're involved in the sport or not. You want to see a Ronaldo playing against a Messi. You want to see a Kaizer Chiefs playing Orlando Pirates. Those names and those figures will always carry the sport.
It's so interesting. You think yeah, go on. All right, no, we seem to...
So, no, I'm back. So as I was saying, all those big names will always carry the sport and bring the interest to the big tournaments. But the thing is, well, how long do you keep them? How do you maintain those guys? You don't want a Ronaldo playing every single game, every single weekend. That's the player management aspect. That is, at times they can actually get it wrong.
Thando Mqoli, thanks very much indeed. SABC Sportscaster starting your mediated conversation this morning. I really appreciate the time. 19 minutes to 9. Continuing your conversation now here on SAFM around the changing tournaments, the changing dates of tournaments that we see. Craig Ray is sports editor at Daily Maverick. Craig, good morning.
Morning, Stephen.
Let's talk a bit about the Currie Cup. I mean, it seems incredible. The world's oldest rugby competition, and it might not happen because there's just no space in the calendar. What led to this?
Well, I think it will happen. Let's just get that out. I think this arbitration, which we'll discuss, unpack a little bit in a moment. It's really just about defining regulations about player rest. So I think the Currie Cup will happen. But going back to your point, when rugby went professional in 1995, that was when the first sort of professional contracts were drawn up, and 96 was the first professional competitions in the Southern Hemisphere, which was Super Rugby or Super 12, as it was known then. That meant that the Currie Cup almost overnight became the secondary competition in the South African rugby ecosystem. It became the less important competition, if you want to put it like that. But it still had Super Rugby had a very specific window from February to May, and Currie Cup had its own window following that, and there was international thrown in, and the calendar was fairly open and easy, and Currie Cup had a very strong place in the calendar. But as rugby's grown, Super Rugby became Super 14, and then there were 18 teams, and then the international calendar grew. And then, of course, South Africa moved north to the Northern Hemisphere from a club perspective, and the URC, the United Rugby Championship, started, and then South Africa's teams also got entry into the EPCR competitions. That's the European Professional Club Rugby, which is basically the Champions and Challenge Cup. If you think of football, the Champions League, this is the Champions League of rugby, and that squeezed the calendar further, and basically that entry into EPCR particularly, which requires a group phase, and then what we're going into over the next 2 weeks, the round of 16 and the quarterfinal knockout, that basically squeezed what remaining 8 weeks there were in the calendar away from the Currie Cup. And SARU has sponsors for the Currie Cup. They get 26 million rand sponsorship plus TV rights from SuperSport. Plus, it is a competition for other smaller unions to play in as well. So they decided that they wanted from July to September this year. That's where the Currie Cup would fit in. But now that our top provincial teams are aligned with the Northern Hemisphere, that is the rest window for most Northern Hemisphere players, where rugby players need 8 weeks, and generally the sports science says 8 consecutive weeks of rest. And that is the period where most of the Northern Hemisphere club players will be having their rest. There's no international rugby, and that will be sort of halfway through end of July through August and into midway through September. And unfortunately, there's going to now, this is where the impasse has come, because there are going to be quite a few players affected by this. They will have played non-stop, and by the time, if they play in the Currie Cup, they don't have another rest cycle. They go straight into the next cycle. So it'll be a 20-month cycle. So that's where the impasse sits at the moment.
Okay. I mean, isn't one of the lessons from Super Rugby that too much rugby against too many people at too many different times is super boring?
Well, I wouldn't call it super boring, but I take your point that I think too much rugby is part of the problem. Yeah, and also the sort of competitions that teams are in confusing South African fans a little bit. You're in the URC one week, and next week you're playing in the European Champions Cup or Challenge Cup. And so it is a little bit confusing. But it's also, I think, partly to do with what we have to go through to fully align with the Northern Hemisphere. From, when COVID hit and New Zealand unilaterally pulled out of SANZAR, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, and Argentina rugby conglomerate, and said, we're not playing Super Rugby anymore. It's, South Africa had to go to plan B, which was take the competitions north. So part of these teething issues are going to have to work out the calendar. There is a move to get to a more globally aligned calendar, but at the moment, we still sit with the Currie Cup problem. And it's not really going to go away because, even if we fully align with the Northern Hemisphere, and that will mean what the most important factor is, and I know there's a lot of threads in this conversation, you must also remember the rugby championship between the test sides, the Springboks, the All Blacks, the Wallabies, and the Pumas takes place in that sort of August, September window as well. And the idea there, what South Africa is pushing for is to have that competition moved into the Six Nations window, which happens in February and March. So therefore, that part of the calendar will be clear. But until that competition moves into the Six Nations window, we won't have full alignment. And the way I understand it is New Zealand are again holding out to move the competition because that will overlap with their Super Rugby, and they're not happy about that. So there's a lot of moving parts here.
Never mind how hot it can be on the Highveld in February or in Durban in February.
Well, they're playing rugby anyway. So.
The situation in cricket, it seems it doesn't really matter where in the world you are or when in the calendar you are. If you switch on a TV, you'll see someone playing IPL cricket. We had that situation with the SA20 earlier in the year. Is that going to happen more often, where certain types of cricket are being prioritised over other types of cricket?
It looks that way. I mean, the SA20 is here to stay. I think it's locked down for at least another 8 years, and for 10 years in total, we've had 2. And it's locked down in the calendar more or less from second week of January to second week of February. Those are the dates. Now, that's right in the sweet spot of summer, of course, when South Africa would traditionally be hosting touring teams, in big bilateral series. And so that does take that chunk of the calendar away from it. So. Yeah, but the Future Tours program, which the International Cricket Council sets up, makes it quite clear that if you've got a bilateral series, say against this one against New Zealand earlier this year, it has to be played in a certain 2-year window. It doesn't have to be played at a specific date. So that the two unions, Cricket South Africa and New Zealand Cricket, can negotiate when to play that. And there was a way around what happened with the weaker team going to New Zealand. So the Cricket South Africa could have played hardball with New Zealand and said, no, we can't play it there. Our SA20 competition is locked in, and we need to play it at a different date. And there's still another year to go in this cycle. So let's find another date to play it. So they could have. But to the broader point, it means something's got to give somewhere always. When you want these lucrative, and let's be quite honest, these T20 competitions are the most lucrative form of cricket, and the money, as we discussed earlier in the show, is important. And last year the SA20, the inaugural season of SA20, made a modest for CSA 30 million rand, but you must remember a lot of players got paid a lot of money that came off the CSA books at the same time, and it will continue to grow and make more and more money. But an Indian tour, for instance, who are here, in total they played 2 tests and several white ball games, made CSA 1.2 billion rand in bilateral rights. So it shows you the value of bilateral cricket can't be diluted too much if you want to maintain really big income.
And very quickly, Ray, if you can, are we going to see the end of Test cricket as a result, simply because it takes so long?
I hope not, but it is under strain. I think the big nations, India, England and Australia, will continue with their various bilateral series. But we're seeing South Africa's Proteas don't even have a game, a 3-test series now for another couple of years, if I remember the calendar correctly. So a lot of our Test cricket will be 2 Test series at best, which is, in a way also not satisfying. But, it is a Victorian age style of play that, is now dragged into the 21st century. And personally, I love it, but I can understand why a lot of people don't love it. And just as an aside, I read a great interview with Gerard Piqué, the former footballer from Spain and Barcelona, and he was just saying that his children, he's involved in a marketing company, and his children can't even watch 10 minutes of football before they sort of flick to their devices. And so he's trying to devise new ways of even shortening soccer matches to create interest in a world where we live of instant gratification. So I suppose, a long-winded way of answering your question, I think Test cricket's battle to survive is going to be tough.
Craig Rape, thank you. Sports editor at Daily Maverick. 10 minutes to 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Stays heavy on the run from the airport into Galilees this morning. It's a truck that jackknifed and crashed off the R24 just at the N12 merge. There's only one lane open, and it's a heavy backlog from the Edenvale exit as you come through onto the N12 and into that scene. Also, crash at Crown Interchange, the Mike 1 North queuing as you arrive into that area from the Boysons area. R21 South is slow approaching Clayville. A reminder to add that extra time for trips from Pretoria down to the airport for the duration of those roadworks that are in place, both at Clayville and then after Bobsfontein down towards the Benoni exit as well. The N3 into Durban that was closed at Paradise Valley and the M13 has all reopened. There was some fallen cables around Paradise Valley this morning, power cables, so temporary closure to lift those and recover them safely. The M13 coming out of Pinetown is heavy on the run to Paradise Valley because, of course, you've got the backlog into the roadworks now. And the M13 really slow as well from Westville over the N2 bridge works area and down towards Sherwood. A lot of traffic on that M13 during that earlier closure. Bit of a bottleneck on the N2 coming south into Spaghetti Junction. There's a crash scene. And a heavy backlog if you're on your way to the airport. A stationary truck before Gateway in the roadworks, and that traffic all the way back through towards the Komashu exit. Cape Town, the crash on the N2 inbound at Lisbeth Parkway is being cleared. It's left some heavy traffic coming in from the Langa side. And the N7, we alluded to this earlier, it's a different traffic pattern running north up the N7. Jake Scoville Drive staying heavy from Goodwood all the way through to the Bosmansdam exit in the Summer Greens area. Also Van Riebeek Road onto Strand Road, coming out of Kales River through the R300. Quite heavy for this time of morning into the Stickland area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Gautrain is for the legends who make moves to save and pay from as little as 35 Rand from Hatfield to Centurion. Is for Ikoko, who steady chill on neutral on a downhill just to save fuel. So when it comes to travel, make moves that save and pay from as little as 35 Rand from Hatfield to Centurion Station. Gautrain, for people on the move.
Masanda wanna trust their creativity to ensure Yanga gets nothing from Mzansi's capital city. But the gentlemen from the east want to leave Kabuyelo in tears. This is the second leg quarterfinal battle of the CAF Champions League. Experience Africa's beautiful game, Mamelodi Sundowns versus Young Africans, on Friday, 5 April at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
Continue your mediated conversation around our changing sports calendar. 7 minutes to 9 the time here on SAFM. Kelvin Watt is the Managing Director for Africa, Asia Pacific and Middle East at Nielsen Sports. Kelvin, good morning.
Morning.
We see all of these changes. They're being driven by money, I presume. Are people actually going to make more money as a result of these changes?
I think two things to that. Not just driven by money. I think what's fundamentally changed in the last 5 years is technology as well. And specifically streaming, direct to consumer products and offerings and things like that. So they all have an impact. And I guess what they do is they make the generation of revenue a larger opportunity for certain people and certainly for the big sports rights and big sports events. And you mentioned Formula One and its expanding calendar, strongly linked to its broadcast deals and its ability through F1 Live to stream directly to consumers and to grow that, which in the end does relate into dollars, rands, pounds, etc. So certainly it is money based. Sport has become very, very big business. We're seeing some massive investments taking place in the sports industry, people buying into teams. We've seen it in a South African context from a rugby team perspective. We've seen it at the huge investment into the franchises in the Betway SA20. So we're seeing a lot of sort of private equity and other money flowing into the game, and that investment money is looking for a return. It's not there for the good of the game; it's there to make a financial return. And as long as we see that, we're gonna see these sort of activities taking place. European football continues to be thrown up with talks of Super League and things like that. So and we'll see that whether it be in rugby, whether it be in cricket, whether it be in football, motorsport, etc. And then obviously they all start to impact on each other as well. So absolutely.
It's interesting to see how still we talk about TV. You talk about other ways. You talk about, Formula One, sort of you do it yourself. But the key to this really is it's still the idea of the live shared event. I'm watching this along with millions of other people all at the same time. We don't know what's going to happen, and it's not scripted. And I support one team and my friend supports another team. And that's the sort of genius of it. That sort of seems to be the magic of it. Does it matter how you watch it, whether you're watching it on a TV or on your phone?
Well, I think you're quite right. I mean, the magic of sport today in today's world is it is unscripted. It's extraordinary. It continues to throw up the most extraordinary storylines all over the world all the time. The reality is that its best experience is live, and certainly that has a massive impact. But I think what we're also seeing in the sport context is that non-live content, is also starting to have a dramatic effect on it. And obviously, a lot of that was started with Drive to Survive out of F1, and at the same time, South Africa pretty similarly launched the first version of Chasing the Sun 1 back 4 or 5 years ago now, which is that type of content is also having a massive impact in the sports industry, and so this video on demand content, what it's also doing is it's meaning that the metric is not how many people are watching at any one time, although that continues to be important, and it's certainly important for people, for advertisers. But the most important content these days is time spent viewing, and what we are seeing is people are spending a great deal of time consuming sporting content, either live or video on demand, and a lot of that is user generated. It's been generated by lots of different people, teams themselves, etc. So the time spent viewing sporting content when aggregated today is just growing and growing and growing, and hence the investment dollars that are flowing into sports properties, because what they're doing is they're guaranteeing that access to people's attention, which just continually grows in the space. And in that context, Craig mentioned earlier about younger people, or perhaps it was watching in small bites. If they're spending 5 hours, watching their phones, and in that they're watching lots of 3 and 4 and 5 minute pieces of sporting content, well, the value of that sporting content is still as valuable. They don't necessarily need to be sitting through 5 or 6 hours of cricket, but they are spending that time consuming sport in various different formats.
There are lots of things that hang off on it, as you say. I mean, I know people talk about the sort of Netflix series around Formula One. I found myself on YouTube during that tournament that we won again last year, watching people I'd never seen before from other countries. Okay, I'll be honest. I was watching the New Zealand rugby pundits because it was so much fun to watch them struggling on the Monday after a show. I never thought that I'd end up doing that. There are lots of different ways to make money out of this now.
I think 100%. I think that's the thing, So the days that everything needed to go through a particular broadcast or through a radio or to get out there, the people's ability now, whether it be in a podcast, vodcast, or straight to YouTube videos. I mean, some of the best content that we're seeing these days is sort of being user generated or created by small groups of people, and their ability to distribute it out to people is just so much easier, and that's fundamentally changing the world that we're living in. And so what you're also going to be seeing, as much as we're seeing a consolidation of big sport at the top, and that consolidation, when you start looking at what's happening with LIV and the PGA, for example, the big move last year with WWE and Endeavor, so WWE and UFC merging, to really put together sort of a combat sport giant, and those things I think we'll continue to see, and that's exactly what's happening in rugby. As you mentioned, in cricket, you're starting to see a consolidation at the top of rights, that the same teams are operating in all these different leagues and those sort of things. I think what you're going to start seeing at the bottom is a massive growth, especially through streaming of small, what let's call it community and youth sport. I mean, already in South Africa, we've seen it with the huge growth of super sport schools. I think 46,000 matches were streamed in South Africa last year. So, just on the school sports front, I think what you're going to start seeing is a lot of community sport, club sport, and those sort of things starting to appear in the streaming world. And that's also going to fundamentally change what people do with their time. And what it'll do is you'll start seeing people sort of gravitating to the things that they care about most. And a lot of that could be very community-based, very, youth-based, etc. And so they'll be sharing their time between those things that are really important to them in their own communities, and then these big leagues, where the best players in the world are all congregating, as you spoke about earlier, where you're watching the very best of the best. Coming back at home at the moment, I'm a cricket fan. I just love nothing better than turning on my TV after work and just seeing what's going on IPL, because I don't particularly support a team, but every night there's just the most extraordinary cricket action taking place. And as a cricket fan, it's amazing to have that for 30 odd days. I think as your first speaker spoke about, for a sports fan and for a cricket fan, I get 30 amazing days of that now. And I've just come off January and February where I had exactly the same with the Betway SA20. So, it's extraordinary.
Kelvin Watt, thank you very much indeed. Really appreciated. Managing Director of Africa, Asia Pacific and Middle East at Nielsen Sports. Bringing an end to a mediated conversation this morning. My thanks also to Craig Ray, the sports editor at Daily Maverick, and starting us off from our very own, from the SABC Sportscaster, Tando Nkoli. We will be back with you tomorrow. From Melissa and Paul Mdu, sons of myself. Look after yourself. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 9 o'clock.
Thank you, Stephen. In your top stories, former NA Speaker hands herself over to authorities and the IEC to administer pledge on political parties to uphold free and fair elections. This is SAFM News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. The former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula has handed herself over to authorities at the Littleton Police Station in Centurion in Pretoria. Yesterday, she resigned both as Speaker and Member of Parliament, citing her wish to safeguard the integrity of Parliament. This comes amid corruption allegations against her when she was Defence Minister. Our senior political reporter Samkelo Masego was outside the police station.
We can confirm that the former Speaker of Parliament, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, facing 12 counts of fraud, corruption, money laundering and racketeering charges, is effectively handing herself over to law enforcement agencies this morning. She will then be processed at this specific police station. She will then go to the Specialized Commercial Crimes Court in Pretoria, where she will then face those 12 counts of corruption that are brought before her. The NPA will not be opposing bail. It will be quite a quick process. She will then go home, and a date of the pre-trial discussions will then ensue between her legal team and the National Prosecuting Authority's legal team.
In your election-related news now, political parties contesting the elections on the 29th of next month are today expected to sign the Electoral Code of Conduct. The IEC has organized the signing ceremony, which will take place at the Gallagher Estate in Midrand in Johannesburg. Zara Groenewald reports.
Parties are expected to vow against political violence directed at other parties and the Electoral Commission, as well as members of the public and the media. Political parties are further anticipated to recognize the authority of the Electoral Commission and accept the outcome of the result. If dissatisfied with the election's outcomes, political parties have the right to challenge the results in court. The signing of the IEC's Electoral Code of Conduct comes amid growing threats of violence concerning an unfavorable result by the newly formed Umkhonto Sizwe Party, led by former President Jacob Zuma. I am Zara Groenewald in Johannesburg.
The DA and other like-minded opposition parties that came together last year to form the Multi-Party Charter for South Africa have highlighted a number of pressing issues in the country. They include rolling blackouts and widespread water shortages. Leaders of the IFP, the DA, Action SA, Isanco and the Freedom Front Plus, whose parties are members of the Charter, met at Umkomazi on the KwaZulu-Natal South Coast yesterday. They sought to offer solutions to some of the country's biggest challenges. DA leader John Steenhuisen explains the Charter's plans.
Exactly the way that we are fixing it in the Western Cape, through opening up the industry to private independent power producers and turning consumers into prosumers. The city of Cape Town, for instance, is the first city in South Africa to offer people money back for electricity that they produce in excess of what they need to put into the grid. This incentivizes people to move to rooftop solar and the like. We also make sure that we break the state's monopoly on electricity generation and supply by allowing entrepreneurs and new startups to enter the space. And I believe we would unleash a jobs revolution in South Africa in renewable energy.
Isango President Dr. Zugile Luyenge says local governments should be financially empowered to repair damaged infrastructure.
The only thing that we will promote as the multi-party charter is to empower the local authorities to have the necessary capacities to deal with issues of infrastructure, where we will locate engineers at the level of the municipalities. It therefore means funding for infrastructure development and management of infrastructure should reside in the districts or metros, because that's where the issues are. Maintenance of infrastructure is very critical, so you cannot keep resources for that purpose at a national level only.
The humanitarian aid organization Gift of the Givers says they will continue to provide disaster relief to victims of fire across Cape Town. The organization's teams and the Anglican Archbishop of Cape Town, Thabo Makgoba, visited Mfuleni yesterday. About 800 people were displaced across the metro over the Easter weekend after fire destroyed their homes. Gift of the Givers spokesperson Alisa Blay says the Anglican Church has bought stationery which will be distributed to learners.
There's still total devastation here, total depression, and we hope in the next coming few days there can be some closure for these families in terms of building materials, some housing issues. The Archbishop has raised the issue of water and sanitation, most importantly the ID documents. Some of them have informed us they cannot access their grants because they do not have the necessary documents in place. But from our side, we have given a commitment to all three fire sites. We will be there for the next few days to look after the humanitarian needs.
And finally, U.S. President Joe Biden is due to speak to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today. Their first direct talks since 7-8 workers were killed in Gaza by an Israeli attack on their convoy. Israel says allegations that the aid workers were deliberately targeted were nonsense. The World Central Kitchen says its vehicles were clearly marked. The BBC's Yolandi Nell reports.
This wasn't a bad luck situation where, oops, they dropped the bomb in the wrong place, the celebrity chef Jose Andres has said. He's stressed that World Central Kitchen was in contact with Israeli forces on Monday night after it unloaded desperately needed food aid that had arrived by sea in Gaza. Its staff, including 3 British security advisors, were in a clearly marked convoy when a drone repeatedly fired at them. Israel has apologised for the deaths. Its military says it's investigating and has blamed the strike on misidentification. The Pentagon said he called for concrete steps to protect aid workers and Palestinian civilians in Gaza after repeated coordination failures with foreign aid groups.
Recapping your top story, former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula has handed herself over at Littleton Police Station in Centurion, Pretoria over allegations of corruption. For SAFM News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 9:30.
#SAFM Talking Point.
The city of Cairo will be divided into two when Zamalek SC confronts their modern future. Zamalek strongly believe they are the kings of the city, but Modern Future want to display something special to conquer the Cairo derby. This is the second leg of the CAF Confederation Cup quarter-final. Catch Zamalek SC versus Modern Future, Sunday 7 April at 9 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
The tax campaign was introduced by our late President Robert Sobukwe, who explained clearly what it was meant for. He actually meant what I've actually told you that now. It was to make people gain confidence in themselves so that now they could produce strategies and programs which they themselves will carry out independently. Then, of course, after status campaign, there came the first important campaign of PAC, that is now the PAS campaign of 1960, of March the 21st, 1960. Now, that PAS campaign, of course, was directed mainly, to get rid of the notorious PAS laws which were harassing our people, which the enemy was using it now to divide and to make people, or to create fear among the people, you see. And then that PAS campaign, therefore, its first aim was now to remove the fear of prison from among the people, because the oppressors used prison to keep down the people. But now if people now could now offer themselves freely and go to prison, they would conquer that fear.
That there is the voice of Zeph Motopeng. He is the former PAC president, and again, reflections of Freedom Month and really the journey that we have been on as a country and what it has taken for us to get to this point where we can celebrate 30 years of our democracy. And as I've said, from the start of this week, we're going to be staying with the theme of Freedom Month throughout the month of April. It's 11 after 9 o'clock. Welcome to the Talking Point. What a day we are in for, right? Already so much has taken place, and we'll of course try and bring you the very latest, at least in as far as it relates then to now the former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, who has handed herself over to police this morning at the Littleton police station. We also understand she's set to make an appearance in court at the Commercial Crimes Court. We're going to bring you the latest with our reporters that are covering the story on the ground. We'll have our reporters come on air just in the next couple of minutes to give us a sense of what has happened. I guess at this point now, it really is the inevitable, right? It was always going to end this way, especially given the fact that the investigative directorate has decided now to bring charges against the former Speaker of the National Assembly. And despite her attempt to interdict any imminent arrest, the court did not agree with the view that was a step it could take, and she now will have to, I guess, face the music. There's no other way of putting it, an answer to the case that the NPA will bring against her. So we'll reflect on this moment. Of course, it comes after she resigned as the Speaker of the National Assembly yesterday, and also as an MP, citing that this was to protect the integrity of Parliament. There have been calls for her resignation since her home was raided by the NPA just a couple of weeks ago, and since then it seems that it really has been building up to a moment such as this, given again what the NPA says are the number of charges that she is expected to answer to. And I wonder then, following her resignation yesterday as the Speaker of the National Assembly and as an MP, is this what accountability in action look like? Is it a sign of Mapisa-Nqakula taking responsibility for her actions and really then allowing herself to go through whatever process she needs to go through in order to potentially clear her name, as she cited in that resignation letter? Does it show or does it instill confidence in you that we are seeing a culture of accountability, that there is progress in fostering that culture of accountability? Because we know that accountability is really central to democracy, right? Whether it relates to ethical behavior, political behavior by office bearers, there is an expectation that these individuals must be held accountable. And when we look at the code of conduct that is set out, the parliamentary code of conduct for MPs, in that code it states very clearly what is expected of members. If we look at the standards of ethical conduct, it says that members must, on all occasions, act in accordance with the public interest that is placed in them. It also goes on to say that they must discharge their obligations in terms of the Constitution to Parliament and the public at large by placing the public interest above their own interest. And they must maintain public confidence and trust in the integrity of Parliament, and thereby engender the respect and confidence that society needs to have in Parliament as a representative institution. That's the code that MPs agree to and sign. That is the code that the Speaker in this instance would have agreed to. So is this now a sign of accountability in action? Or is it too little too late? Has the damage already been done? I'd love to hear from you. I'll be taking your calls on 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial, 086 000 2032. It is the open line, so it is your national roundtable. You get to set the agenda. I'll be taking your calls and your WhatsApp voice notes shortly. On Municipal Watch for this Thursday, we're going to be taking a closer look at understanding laws around tribal land, whether it is buying tribal land or selling tribal land. And we know that often you can't buy a tribal land. It's permission to occupy that one must receive. And it's off the back of the story we did last week on the area of Mamahule in Limpopo, where we have this contest taking place over the rights of that land, and clearly what is number one, unfinished business in as far as land claims in that area are concerned. But today we have infrastructure that has been built. People have built houses worth millions of rand, and they now are facing potential eviction of that land due to contestation over who the rightful owners are. So quite an important story, but we'll then just deal with the laws that govern tribal land. Will be in conversation with the chairperson of the National House of Traditional and Khoi Leaders. In the final hour of the show, of course, we've had a lot of tariff hikes kick in at the beginning of the month. Not only are we seeing increases with electricity, we're seeing municipal rates and taxes also increase this month. So it's really going to put quite a demand on our budgets collectively. So we'll have that conversation in the final hour of the show, just to take a look at, the collective costs that are set to go up and how we can best position and prepare ourselves for that. Well, that's what you can expect coming up on The Talking Point. In a moment, then, we'll take you live to the Littleton Police Station. That's where Samkela Maseko is. We'll also take you live to the Commercial Crimes Court, where Kenny Mapanga is, and we're expecting that the Speaker is going to be appearing this morning. And then, of course, I'll also be taking your calls. But just a reminder of how we have ended up here. These are some of the scenes that played out earlier on this week in court, where Judge Sulet Potrel handed down her ruling, which was really the blow for the former Speaker of the National Assembly, that dismissed her application to grant an interdict. And of course the NPA saying then the wheels of justice will turn.
This applicant has been ensured that Section 40 will only only be utilised if she does not present herself to the police station. The applicant has failed to do so for 2 weeks. The fact that Section 40 will only be utilised if she does not present her to the police station is in complete compliance with the standing orders, which sets out that arrest should be a last resort. Clearly, the NDPP and the police investigator is aware of this right and has afforded her ample time to report to the Little police station with a legal representative. Mr. Piramore, already on 9 March 2024, had asked who her legal representative is. On 17 March 2024, the legal representative for the first time made contact with Piramore. The delay in processing the applicant was done out of courtesy. It was made clear that it was not a negotiation and was not open-ended. Mr. Mayer set out that due to a long trial in Durban, he is only available on 3 April 2024. This right does not include that a legal representative dictate when a police official acting in terms of its authority has to fulfill its duty. Already at the gatehouse, the applicant is afforded legal representation. She has been afforded a right to legal representation in the pre-trial and pre-arrest stage. A court cannot interdict to prevent statutory authorities to comply with their statutory duties. And it is not as if the state representatives have been not lenient and has let 2 weeks go by.
Open to every citizen in the country to have a lawyer contact us or us contacting the suspect to indicate who his or her representative is. It is nothing untoward, it is not unprecedented. But what is unprecedented is the kind of application they brought to court today.
What do you make of the court speaking about a courtesy that you've extended to her as authorities? The fact that you are even allowing her to be taken to court by her attorney, be taken to the police station by an attorney, this does seem like it's preferential treatment.
It is not. It is open to every citizen in the country. It has happened in the past. It's just that I don't have the names of the people that were extended that courtesy before.
Unforgettable happens when the young and the old know they can surf, snorkel, fish, enjoy whale watching, and end the day with sundowners neshisa nyama. KwaZulu-Natal is a jewel waiting to happen. Ziyakhipha with hiking, horse riding, biking, ziplining, and mountain biking adventures waiting for the fearless and the bold. Unforgettable happens here. Zwagala. Brought to you by Tourism KwaZulu-Natal.
Masanda wanna trust their creativity to ensure Yanga gets nothing from Mzansi's capital city. But the gentlemen from the east want to leave Kabuyelo in tears. This is the second leg quarter-final battle of the CAF Champions League. Experience Africa's beautiful game, Mamelodi Sundowns versus Young Africans, on Friday 5 April at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
We continue the conversation on the talking point. In a moment, I'll be taking your calls on the open line. It is the National Roundtable. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. Before we get into your calls, let me bring on air Samkele Maseko, SABC senior political journalist. He's at the Littleton police station this morning. Samkelo, good morning to you. I guess thinking about today being Thursday, after the ruling on Tuesday, it was only a matter of time.
Indeed, Kathy, it was only a matter of time because many people had assumed that she'd be handing herself over to law enforcement agencies yesterday. But after the court judgment at the North Gauteng High Court, her legal team and the legal team of IPID and also the legal team of the NPA then ensued in discussions of the Independent Directorate then ensued in discussions on how Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula would hand herself over to law enforcement agencies. A consensus was reached that it would be today on Thursday morning at about 8 o'clock, where she'd hand herself over to law enforcement agencies, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. She did arrive at the Littleton police station at about 6:45 in the morning. Earlier than that, we also saw the arrival of former Speaker and former Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, Ms. Baleka Mbete, who was there to support her long-term comrade and friend in Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula in the allegations of fraud, corruption, money laundering, and the 12 counts that she will be facing at the Specialized Commercial Crimes Court, which will be housed at the Pretoria Magistrates Court this morning, where Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula will effectively appear for the very first time. The state will not be opposing her bail application.
The NPA would be well aware, Samkelo, of the perception that could be created through this case, not only through the arguments that were put before court, but just ordinary people that are looking at these events and wondering, well, are there extra courtesies, as Judge Pottrell alluded to in her judgment, that are being afforded and extended to the former speaker?
There are some of those discrepancies that are there, particularly knowing that the state would not be opposing bail, but it will not be the first time where the state sees someone as not being a flight risk and they do not oppose bail. It's happened in previous times, but this time around, it's the first time that the state would not be opposing in a high-profile individual like Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. Remember, the state did oppose the bail application of those who were accused of corruption, money laundering, and fraud in the African Global Operations case, formerly known as BUSASA. That would be Angelo Grootes, that would be Vincent Smith, and subsequent to the others in the VBS case like Daniel Caesar, Kabelo Masepe as well. The state did oppose their bail applications, but ultimately they were successful in getting those bail applications in court. So it does cause some sort of a conundrum for the state, and in particular for South Africa's law enforcement agencies and for the long arm of the state, particularly knowing that a politician whose bail application will not be opposed. It does look as if there are some rules for those who are in power and there are rules for those who are not in power, pretty much in an animal farm scenario where some animals are more equal than others. It does set that sort of precedence. But this time around, looking at some of the merits that Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula had put in her affidavit and also in her court papers, when she was applying for that urgent court interdict, she did cite issues such as her health in cells. But one question that many South Africans may ask, are the conditions of the cells good enough for other people who are not in power and not good enough for those who are in power?
Samkele, as we are speaking, of course, there are further developments that are unfolding at the Commercial Crimes Court. I know you are not at the court, but what are we anticipating there today?
We're anticipating that Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula will formally apply for bail. Then after that, her legal team will then want to be fully furnished with the charge sheet that will be conferred against their client. We do know that Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, in her court papers, in the failed court interdict, she did want the official docket that the state has and all other incriminating information that they may have against her to be handed over to her legal team. You'd also remember that she also wanted the drawings, the architectural drawings that were seized from her house, to be handed back to her legal team. So her legal team will be ensuing to get the charge sheet, to get the docket, and also to get their client home, and they prepare for the pre-trial and ultimately for the trial.
Samkele, as a political reporter, I would imagine that there is just a sense of the extraordinary nature of the events that are unraveling from the time that I think the Independent Directorate raided her home to where we are today.
It is extraordinary events, particularly knowing some of the stances that she has also taken as Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. You'd remember in the case of Jackie Slaby, on the eve of his arrest as well, the late Jackie Slaby, the late former police commissioner in the country, was also charged with fraud, corruption, money laundering, and racketeering charges. He also tried to interdict his imminent arrest at the time, and that interdict failed. That's some of the historical cases that me and my colleagues, such as Solega Kotashi and Kenima Panga, have been citing, that such applications do not generally succeed, particularly dating it back from when Jackie Slaby tried it and now Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula, and how it ultimately failed. You just look at the judgment that the judge gave, particularly saying that it seems as if it says that if that particular interdict were to be granted, it would create a scenario of loss for some and loss for others, where those with money can urgently interdict their imminent arrest and get away with it and not get arrested, whilst those who do not have the financial means to have expensive legal teams representing them would not be able to apply for these urgent court interdicts, which then creates a problem for South Africa's judicial arm of the state. And thus, this particular judgment has made it very historic in the nature that it also protects those who may not have the financial muscle to urgently interdict their imminent arrest, but also it's extraordinary times, because it's also for the very first time where you find a politician in South Africa who is facing such serious charges, who puts the institutions of state ahead of her own interest. In her own resignation letter, she says she is resigning in order to protect the integrity of Parliament and not to drag Parliament in these allegations that she is facing, knowing very well that these allegations stemmed when she was still the Minister of Defense and not the Speaker of the National Assembly. And ultimately, the ANC as well coming out to laud her in saying that they are very grateful in the sense that Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula took responsibility of the allegations that she's facing and did not want to drag the ANC's name in these particular allegations, in the nature that she has voluntarily resigned as a member of Parliament, resigned as a Speaker, and stepped aside voluntarily as a leader of the African National Congress.
All right, Samkele Maseko, we'll leave it there for this morning. SABC senior political journalist. On that note, let's take you into our 9:30 news headlines. It's the open line on the other side of this.
Good morning, Kathy. In your headlines, former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula is currently appearing before the Pretoria Magistrates Court. Earlier, she went to Littleton Police Station in Centurion, where she handed herself over to the authorities. Police Minister Peggy Cele is expected to visit the community of Marion Hill in Durban today. This follows the killing of 9 suspects in a shootout with police yesterday. And Kaizer Chiefs soccer player Luke Fleurs has died after he was shot during a car hijacking incident last night in Haniju in the north of Johannesburg. Police spokesperson Mavela Masondo said the police are looking for the suspects. I'll have details on these and other stories at 10.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Morning, Kathy. Morning, Kathy. Now you can tell that nobody is above the law. The speaker wasted her time to run away like a headless chicken, knowing fully that she was supposed to do what she did yesterday, all along. So now this is a wake-up call for all these ANC guys, all these thieves who steal monies and do all these things, that there is no way you can run away. There's a challenge, Kathy, I just want to give you this morning. Can you please ask Mike from Newlands to please pronunciate the name of the former speaker, Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula? Can you just ask Mike from Newlands? If he's listening, Mike, would you please call and pronunciate the name Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula? Thank you, Kathy. This is Andy from Cape Town.
Good morning, Kathy and the listeners. Kishuma Samuels. We are not equal in this country, and we are not treated the same. The law in South Africa favors those who have money. Mapisa Ngakula should have been arrested long ago. I've already mentioned in one of the stations that she will go to the police station, she will arrange with Peggy Cele and other ANC officials just to hand herself and go back home. This case, the same like Zandile Gumende, Jacob Zuma, Ace Mahashule will just disappear. It won't go anywhere because she's a big fish and she'll be deployed somewhere and be given a tender Thank you, Katie. Bye-bye.
Good morning, SAFM. It's Anonymous from Tumala. Yeah, it's very worrying when you see the law of our country. It's working in another way to other people. Those people, prominent people, they are being treated with kid gloves. Those that are poor, they will be treated very heavily so by now I think ukuthi if that Mapisa Ngakula was the normal ordinary citizen, ngabe kudala she was being arrested, but now they just make some special things. Hey, they want what all those things. Let the law be equal to everyone. We want the law to be equal to everyone. Law must not be certain people treated like this and others being treated like this. It's unfair. It's unfair. All of us, we are governed by one constitution that needs to apply to each and every individual. Thank you.
All right. Those are just some of the WhatsApp voice notes coming through on the show this morning. To Midrand now. Khotso, good morning.
Good morning, Sister Casey. How are you?
Good, thank you, Khotso.
Good, man. Look, let me talk about the rampant corruption within the ruling party. I don't want to talk about Mapisa Ngakula. No, I'm less interested in that because we knew that one day his day will also come. Then it will happen to her as much as it did with the Umkhwebane and the poor churches. Who she thought to her it will never come, but now the issue with currently which is happening within the ruling party, the rampant corruption which we are seeing it, is quite worrisome. Look, we are heading to elections now. I think it's for everyone to see. We have talked about the level of corruption. We have talked about the level of inequalities. We have talked about things, the manner in which things are happening within the country. But what is worrying now is that the new regime which is going to come into power, it's supposed to change some of these kind of issues which is happening in our fold. Hello?
Yes, Khotso, do you still think that the chances of the ANC going below 50 are high when, what will be the impact of a moment such as this? Somebody in the position of a Speaker of the National Assembly resigning from that position and also stepping aside from her responsibilities in the party. Do you not think that this is going to send signals that perhaps there's a change in the party?
No, obvious. It's going to send a serious signal. Look, in fact, I didn't want to discuss the issues of the ANC and their corrupt comrades because these old women and men, we have warned them about the Ramaphosa regime because there's a hit list. You should look in the list. The person who's coming now, as we are speaking, she knows herself. There's another woman who's coming. Just when I watch the speech, it's a hit list. They are going to sweep them, all of them. Look,
what is the hit list, Khotso? What is the hit list?
It's the people whom they're supposed to set them to prison.
And what is the criteria for this? Surely one would think that if somebody's accused of crime, then they must have their day to answer to those charges or allegations against them. But you seem to believe that there might be a broader conspiracy behind it.
No, not actually a conspiracy per se. It's a list of people who the ANC, they don't want them anymore because the Integrity Commission is the one which was supposed to have dealt with the issue. Because they said out of that list which went to Parliament, 80 people, according to the Zondo, 80 people or more are supposed not to have been there. You see, Mara, because they are there, and you don't have people who have guts to confront them to say, when go home, when go home, you see, or and so forth and so forth. You see, so but it's a list.
So basically, Khotso, you think that this is just the beginning? You think that in the next month or so, we're going to see more and more leaders of the ANC that have been fingered in corruption or that have allegations against them, that the police are going to be moving in on them too?
Exactly. Mara, my discussion this morning is not about that. My discussion is about the new changes which are coming, because me are more interested about the future. Because the corruption is everywhere to see, man. And this illusion of people are calling here, claiming, hoping that the ANC will go above 50%. That will never happen. I think, Katie, up to so far, about more than six agencies, these polls agencies, which were analyzing the polls, none of them said ANC will go more than 40%. All of them are clear. Do you want to tell me that all those survey and research, those people can be wrong about the ANC only? Because those people, they will tell you. But besides that, you can see the level of anger, isolation on the ground. To say people, they said, Tina, we are enough about these people.
Okay.
What we want new change in our lives.
Okay.
This new change should come about what?
All right. Khotso out in Midrand. Let's leave it there for this morning. In Durban now, Zanele, good morning.
Good morning, Kathy. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Only a pleasure.
Kathy, I haven't forgot about my update, but for now, Kathy, I'm here sitting with the gentleman, with a man of on the age of 29. I left home 8 o'clock this morning. The reason why I'm here, it is too far by my house. It's up the hill. The reason I came here to talk to him so that I'll call you, it's because he is living with a 2-year-old daughter. And I found out his story is this: the mother of this baby left her when she was 5 months old, and he don't know where the mother went. So the problem now here, he is unemployed. As he is unemployed, he is looking after this baby. He went through the processes of social worker. I even arranged for him during the Easter weekend, as soon as I find out his story, that as I used to see him walking past by my house carrying this baby, I only came to know only a couple of weeks ago that this is the story. So I arranged for him with the matron of the local clinic so that they will help him, because if I find out from him is that the social worker are ordering him to arrange for the DNA result, blood test result, so that it will be proved that the baby is him. This baby has no birth certificate. That resulted on for him not getting what the child support grant. This guy, Katie, is unemployed. You can cry if you can see their situation. And as the result, I came here so that I will ask the power of the talking point to help this guy, because it is sad, Katie. It is sad for the fathers who, if they are left with the babies, they are carrying so much difficulties in order for the social development to give them the child support grant. But when it comes to mothers, it's easy. It's easy. It's very easy for mothers. You won't see the mother going that far in order for them to get the child support grant.
Sure, Zanele, it sounds like quite a story, and a very difficult set of circumstances that this young man that you're talking about is faced with. But if I understand so far, the Department of Social Development has been helpful. They've been trying to see how best to assist.
He attended those social worker things from 2022. Yeah, from 2022.
Okay, it's been a couple of years.
2 years
yeah.
now. Yeah, the baby is 2 years now. By that time, when the mother left the baby was 5 months. So since from 2022, There is not even the food parcels, nothing. So when I arranged for him, I spoke to Metro and arranged for him that could you maybe arrange to the DNA test there at the hospital, recommend for him. So the Metro, and I would like to upload that Metro, Katie, because she was so helpful. She was so helpful just to get back to me as I'm nothing, Katie, because people, they are running too much if it's a pastor or whoever. So I just gave him the WhatsApp voice message and I told the Metro, this is the situation.
Okay.
And she said he must come. There is a clinic social worker who used to come on Wednesday. So they went there. The social worker says the same thing, that you must have 1,700 in order to go and do that DNA test. There's nothing else we can do about that. So that is why I've decided to call you, Katie. I'm asking the power of the talking point, the power of the mic of the talking point to help this guy. You won't believe how far I went, and it's too far here. You are going up the hill. I came here so that I will talk to you in front of him.
Okay.
He is sitting here next to me as I say, there's a little girl here in front of me.
Okay. All right. Zanele, thank you so much for taking those steps. And tell me, is he willing to speak at all about his situation? Does he maybe just want to take a minute telling us about his experience?
Yes, there.
Okay, what's his name?
Hello, my name is Mangoba Kabel.
Hello, Mangoba. It's great to have you on the talking point. Mam Zanele is a regular listener of our show, and she's been telling us about your ordeal. How has the experience been for you over the last 2 years, trying to get a grant for your daughter?
Hey, it's hard, man, because I'm trying anywhere. Even the NGO helped me and try to help me, and you find up in the period of time, and the story not go far. I try. I feed my child with it. I work with him, carrying him to work. Even neighbors, yeah. I was working so right, have a job. The sooner I abandoned the child, the mother of my daughter, things started there, not go well.
So you had to leave your job to take care of your daughter?
Sometimes it's not like a job can permanent. I can take a few days. See, I can carry her. Even I have no money to paying even the care. Heading crash, going to crash. Sometimes I have work for the money to feed her.
And what kind of jobs do you often get?
Sometimes I can like a carpeting position job that can say come and work, helping neighbors, see like things like that.
All right. Well, let me thank you for taking the time to share your story with us again. And what we're going to do is that we'll see what we can do. Of course, we know we can't promise to hear, or rather we can't promise to be able to help everybody, but we can absolutely try. So we'll follow up. I'm going to put you and Mamzanele back to our producers, Lebo and Kanya, and we'll see what we can do to try and help, at least so that you're able to have food on the table for you and your daughter. All right, yeah. And it's the reality. It's the reality of our country. It's the reality of the circumstances, the situations that millions of South Africans find themselves in. Millions of South Africans. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm back with more of your calls.
Aston Villa have found comfort on the top half, and they want maximum points to retain their decent position.
Put it back, and this time, Zaniolo is on! The equaliser belongs to Aston Villa!
Get the Bees want to cause havoc and deprive the villains by registering an away victory.
Wissart tried one of them in the first half. He's finished it in the second, and Brentford have turned this round.
This is the Premier League. Catch the exciting clash between Aston Villa FC and Brentford FC on Saturday, 6 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Kathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, we continue the conversation on the talking point, and of course we will give an update on just how far we get with the story that we took just before we went to break. I'm still taking your calls. It is still the open line. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. Let me head over to Vosloorus now. Tabang, good morning.
Morning, Kathy. How are you?
Good, thank you, Tabang.
Yes, man. Regarding Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula, I agree with everyone that she must face the allegations and she must stop, how can I put it, fighting for her to answer to the allegation. But my concern is, we as the society, it seems like we prove people guilty before the charges can be proven in court. To the eyes of many, she's already guilty, the way I listen to the callers and everyone saying. And also coming from you, Casey, when you say in your intro that she must face, how did you put it? She must be accountable to her actions. I feel that maybe your statement might be inappropriate because what must she answer to? Because it's allegations, you know. If she's guilty, she must face the music. But we can't pronounce her guilty before she undergoes the process. That is my main concern. And it reminds me of people, that many people are accused of rape. The case that comes to mind is the case of Tall Esmo. We as a society must start to see people as innocent until they are proven guilty in a court of law. That's my main concern.
Look, Tabang, the reality is that by the time that the independent directorate decides that it's got enough evidence, at least enough to lay charges against her in her position as the Speaker of the National Assembly, that action in of itself is not without consequence. It is a weighty. It is a weighty. It has weighty implications for the role that she's serving in. And that's what one means when she says, well, she must be accountable because these are allegations that have been brought to her and the opportunity for her is to answer to those allegations.
But how many people have been accused of something and only to be proven innocent, Kathy?
Yes, but if she's proven innocent, then that will be good for her. I mean, yes, Tabang, I can only speak for myself. I don't think I have an interest in whether she's proven guilty or not. What I have an interest in is the fact that as somebody who is occupying a position of public office and the code of conduct, especially where ethics are concerned, does set such a high standard, it is the right thing that she has done.
Yes, but let's not say she must be held accountable. Accountable of what? Of being accused. Anyone of us
accountable. Can be accused. If one remains in a position of public office and yet they have these very damning allegations against them, in your view, does that not drag the reputation and the image of an institution such as Parliament through the mud?
Yes, it does.
Yes, and that's what I mean by accountability.
Yes, she resigned. But
yes, that's what I mean.
So if somebody just go and accuse someone, then that person must be accountable for the accusation.
But it's not just somebody accusing somebody, Tabang. She's not just somebody, and these are not just some allegations. These are serious allegations. The prosecuting directorate is saying that we are bringing an official case against her. It's not nothing.
And if we behave in that manner, it means if you want to remove a politician, I can just go and say John Steenhuisen committed this and that, and then
unless Thabang, what you're saying is that you don't trust the public institutions that are effecting or carrying out justice in the country, that when the NPA says it has a case against somebody, unless what you're saying is that you don't trust that.
The less said about the NPA, I'm following the case of Senzo Meiwa. It's disgusting what we see happening there. So if you're going to put trust on such institution, they are too political, those institutions. It depends which sides they lean on, you know. So I'm just saying, you know, I watched the podcast of Tol Esmo. It touched me because it means every one of us, especially men, we are not safe. Anyone can just come and say, I did this and that, and then I'm in jail.
Look, Thabang, you know, the difficulties that the experiences with the criminal justice system in this country can be so extreme, right? But we must try to not draw generalizations based solely on those extreme experiences. So yes, you have been people that have been wrongfully accused, but it doesn't mean that it's the experience of everybody.
But my concern is, let us not put the cart before the horse. You know, let's wait for the process. If Mapisa Ngakula,
but nobody has declared her guilty, Thabang. Nobody has declared her guilty.
Let's be honest. The talks, the calls, you know, people are excited.
But accountability of a public office bearer is not something that should be seen as an aspersion of guilt or innocence. Even she says that in her letter, Thabang, that the move is not one where she's acknowledging guilt. It's one which says that she understands that for the integrity of an institution like Parliament to remain intact, she cannot continue as the Speaker, while also trying to clear her name.
Saying we as the society, it can happen to me. You know, if I'm accused of something, even if I'm proven innocent, people will still have that stigma against me, you know, that, you know, this person. I'm saying let us not prove people guilty before they can undergo the process.
All right, Thabang out in Phosphorus. Thanks for the call. Anonymous, you're in the Eastern Cape. Good morning. Rohona?
I'm good. Before I make a comment, can I just clarify something? Whatever I'm going to say is not about ENK, it's not about President Jacob Zuma. It's just that it's something that came to my mind because of this of public officers holding offices with a criminal record. Now, what I'm thinking is, how far does IEC, especially with local government officers, how far does IEC, SALCA, and everyone involved to ensure that they do vet or screen those appointed councillors before they put them into the office? Because think of me anonymous. Little anonymous had a case. Then he was found guilty in a court of law. Then given a 5 years suspended sentence. But the fact remains, he was found guilty in a court of law for anonymous. And the community, they will appoint him because, like, they know what I know. He was not sentenced. He's out here. Then maybe they've got a trust in appointing him and in voting me in. But now, how does all these institutions ensure the team of these local councillors? I want to know of it about Ulendo Umhlekazi, but I'm not talking about him now. I'm talking about it general, because if it's a law, if it's an act, it's for everyone.
Look, Anonymous, I think by and large the political parties are the ones that sort of try to run their vetting processes, and as we see with the national elections now, once candidates have been put out there, then people can raise objections if there's information that they're aware of that they believe the authorities have not come into contact with. So I think it's a responsibility, yes, on municipalities to do the vetting, on SALGA to also play its role where it can, but where we know as individuals of the public that somebody has gone through a process but it has not been put on the record, we also can raise it.
Yeah, we can, but not in this country, because I raise it tomorrow, you hear what, my house was come down. That's the only problem.
Oh, yeah.
I put it forward, because most of what I've noticed is, like, hence I made an example of someone being found guilty, then getting a suspended sentence. The fact remains that person has found guilty by the court of law. Come back to the community. No, it didn't have the case was because maybe some people don't understand exactly what does it mean to say it's a suspended sentence. They stood firm with me. I'm in the offices, but now some of 2 or 3 people within the community know this is what happened. But now they will be afraid to go out.
Yeah. Look, as long as, that culture of silence is there, Anonymous, then it can't change because, yes, people can hide aspects of their lives, but we are the ones that ultimately allow them to get away with it, right? We are the ones that allow people to reinvent themselves, aren't we?
Yes, we are. But
yeah. All right.
I'm saying now, at midnight, an AK-47 will be putting down my house down. Then quickly to escape, the other one is of these political leaders visiting churches right now because of the election. For the entire year, why they didn't do this? Only now.